Hey, folks, my bad. We almost didn't make it. All right, so I know I'm late. And so, like I said, when I'm late, I must do a giveaway. That way, it at least holds me to some accountability, right? All right, so just like we did last time, in order to win this prize, this is a $20 gift card. You are going to have to be the first person to shoot me the answer to my Instagram, okay? My Instagram is Gimmieabeat, Gimmieabeat. All right, that's where the answer is going to go. Putting it in this chat will not help because everybody has a different internet connection. So the first person to give me the correct answer to my Instagram will be the person that wins the prize. And then when you win the prize, just shoot me your email. I'll email you your money sometime this week. All right. So your question. Now we know that there was, and this is related to music. So we know there was the British invasion way back when with the Beatles and all the acts that came like Rolling Stones. But there was a second British invasion musically. What decade did that invasion take place? Now, this should be easy, and somebody should have the answer within the next 20 seconds. All right? Again, what decade would constitute the second British invasion musically? All right? Somebody send an answer, but that ain't it. All right, let's see what we got. The second British invasion musically, right? What decade are we talking? The second one, not the first one, not the Beatles getting off the plane. All right, so if I got one answer, let's see who else we got here. Boom, somebody got it. Y'all were quick. Let's see. Oh, I know you. All right, Astro American, you got it. It was the 1980s. Now, here's the reason why. So just to sum things up really quick. So when we come back to the era of MTV, one of the things that took place was that MTV didn't have enough videos, right? So between about 81 to maybe 83, they only had about 120 music videos to play. At the time, US labels did not see the value in music videos, and so they really weren't spending the budgets to push a lot of acts. However, over in the UK, things were a bit different, and there were tons of British acts that actually had videos. So because MTV really had no catalog of videos, they started receiving the videos that the UK acts were kind of bringing over, and that's how we kind of got the new wave sound and a lot of the things happening in the early 80s. So that was your trivia. All right, let me get a few hellos in real quick, and then we're going to just jump right into it. Let me just put this on silent. Boom, handled. Okay. All right. So what up, folks? What's up? Crystal L. She said finally made it for a live. Welcome. Bethany McGowan. Hey y'all, what's up? What's up? Emmanuel 2520. What's up? What's up? What's up? Alan, what up? Queen, what up? Nikita Clark, what's up? Marlon, what up? What up? What up? What up? Shout out to BNA Music 88. I ran into you at the airport. It was funny because sometimes when like somebody knows me from YouTube, it takes me a minute to, like if it's like off to a distance and you see somebody kind of like staring, you're like you're trying to figure out where you know somebody from, and then they always like, I follow your thing. I'm like, oh, okay, right. We up here holding up TSA, trying to figure out who knows who. But yeah, what up, Natural Empress? Let's see, what up? Let me just change my chat over to live and not top. Because when it sets the top, I miss half the comments. Thank you, Lil I3D. Let's see. What up? All right, we're gonna keep it moving because we got some time. Tyler was saying he got to see Stevie Wonder. I didn't get to go to the show. He was in Baltimore, but I didn't get to go. Oh well. I don't want to say next time, but dang. Let us see here. Somebody said, I know the answer, Mr. Instagram handle. My bad. I'll make sure to say it twice next time. So, yeah. All right, folks. Let's jump in. We got a whole lot going. Julian Steve said, Calvin, one of your albums is not on Apple Music anymore. It will be back up over the weekend. There was a technical glitch with one of the tracks, so I had to yank the whole thing down from everything. That was Spotify, Apple, Tidal, everything. It'll be back up, though. In the meantime, enjoy the After Yesterday album. The Before Tomorrow should be back up, I think, tomorrow or before the weekend at some point, right? The good thing is when you own all your music, you can fix the logistics of whatever happens. But yeah, it was something that, I don't know, everything was fine and dandy. And then like about a week ago, I noticed something was off with the Before Tomorrow album. So I was like, all right, let me fix it. And unfortunately, you're not able to just fix that individual track. You got to just yank the whole project and re-upload it. So only thing that will suck is those streams and stuff have to restart. But the single I Want is still available since it was released as a single separately from the album. But yeah, everything should be out soon. But see, this is why y'all should purchase, right? When you purchase on iTunes and Amazon, you'll always have a copy. Anyway, but yeah, so that is that. A few quick announcements here, and then we'll just jump into it. The book club, our next session is going to be November 18th. All right, we are actually reading, boom, Glow, the autobiography of Rick James. Boom, it's actually been a fun session so far. We're reading pages 53 to 107. Okay, so again, November 18th, pages 53 to 107. All right, let's get to the nonsense, right? By the way, I'm a little tired. I've been traveling. I literally landed early this morning. So I'm a little tired, but we're gonna make this work, right? And so I'm gonna just jump right into Orange Man and his rally. So the funniest thing is, now I was actually on the plane on the way home, right? And so I didn't feel like paying for the internet on my flight, and I was like, you know what? Because I've already spent a whole lot of money this month. Let me start being a bit more frugal and reasonable. It's fine to sit for a few hours and not be glued to your phone. So instead, I just had my music playing and little books and stuff, and did that. So I'm just enjoying my flight home. A little turbulent, but it's so be it. Enjoying my flight home. I get off the plane, and when I look at my phone, it is bombarded with all kinds of notifications about what the heck has gone down in Madison Square Garden. And the more and more I read of all the different things and saw, ow. Like, I felt like I turned into like one of those really, really wealthy people that like clutch their pearls when they're just like, what? The more I read, I was like, yeah, this is a lot, right? And I think this is something that has a lot of people's attention. It's definitely been a conversation of today, just all the things that went down at that rally, things that were said, things that were endorsed, ideas that were put out. And has a lot of people feeling like some kind of way, right? And I think the question really becomes, well, how do we even get to this? Like, how do we get to a place where, because one, it's nothing about a presidential candidate having a rally. That's every presidential candidate. But it's more so about what has taken place at the rally and what that rally symbolizes and what was deemed as okay to take place at that rally. That's really the conversation that I think people are having, right? So I would say this. One, we are definitely living in an era where draconian behavior is now seen as strength and masculinity and intelligence. That's one piece. That's why you have somebody like Ben Shapiro talking about, retirement. That shouldn't be a thing. No working, able-bodied adult should ever retire. We're supposed to just work until we die, right? So you kind of have that whole thing going on. The idea of just being totally removed from any element of empathy, the idea of becoming these almost super beings that have no emotion and nothing is ever that bad and get over it, right? And then the second part that I would say is that society has definitely become very individualistic, right? Where things that were once collectively understood or anything that is seen as collective, let me backtrack. It's like where the idea of anything collective at all is seen as less intelligent, seen as like sheepish, seen as socialist, because they throw the term socialist out every 5 minutes. But it gets me to the point where, again, things that were once collectively understood to not be okay or to be as a problem are now in a space where it's okay to put them on the table and say, well, actually, this is possibly good. So we're living in that era, right? Where people are breaking their necks to always be contrarian. People are breaking their necks to always go against the grain because that's the thing to do. It will show that I'm different. I'm not like the rest of these other idiots. Look at me, right? So even when we're talking about just how society has moved and responded to different things, right? And actually, to my point, a perfect example, I've seen it on social media. I don't know the name of the show, but whatever the show it is, it's the person in the room. They have somebody who has some kind of viewpoint that opposes everybody else in the room. And they sit in a chair, and then all these other people that are in the room, and I don't know, 20, 30, 40 people, there's another chair, and they're going to go against all these people about whatever topic they're talking about, right? And it's like the idea of change my mind, right? And so we're kind of in that era where that's now starting to be seen as a thing of, oh, you must be super unique or super intelligent, or you're the epitome of what everybody else should aspire to be like. So that idea of collective anything is starting to be seen as sheepish, starting to be seen, but there's an exception to that. We'll get to it. But it's starting to be seen as like not that bad. And because we've gotten into this era of not that bad, even things that were once seen as too wild for 2016 are like Eureka's Castle in 2024, right? Think back to when Trump came down that escalator in 2015, right? And he said whatever he said about the Mexicans. At that point in time, that was like one of the most offensive things that anybody had ever heard come out of the mouth of anybody running for office in modern times, right? To the point where, Macy's cuts ties with Orange Man, right? He loses sponsorships. The NBC fires him. No more Celebrity Apprentice, right? All those different things take place. But honestly, if we fast forward to now, those very same comments, that's just routine at this point, right? Those are the comments that a lot of politicians are utilizing in 2024. Same thing with like the Roseanne show in 2017, right? Roseanne makes a return. She says what she says about Valerie Jarrett. Roseanne is yanked off the show. They kill her character off, and the show is renamed The Connors. In 2024, those very same statements that Roseanne made about the whole Planet of the Apes thing wouldn't have even been a big deal in 2024, because we've gotten to a space where everything has become very like desensitized, which leads to my third point, which is we're now in the era of it's not that bad. And then what about? So when you do the it's not that bad, the next thing they do is they bring up the what about, and somehow will bring up something that's not even equatable to what they feel the other side is doing to justify what they're doing on their end, right? And I said this some lives ago, we've gotten into a space where, because we've had so many people who don't want to appear to be too sensitive, or don't want to appear to be like all those sheepish people who are offended because they are so above when it comes to intellect, they're so above when it comes to how they see the world, they're not offended, it's not a big deal. We've gotten to a space where we've given inch by inch by inch by inch to all these moments that weren't so bad. That ain't so bad. Orange man came down the stairs and said Mexicans are rapists. That's not so bad. He said he can stand on Saks Fifth, I'm thinking of the store. He's saying he can stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and nothing will happen. Not that bad. He said the people in Charlottesville were very fine people, even the one that ran over and killed the girl. Not that bad. You just keep saying so much and keep saying everything is just okay. It's not that big of a deal. Eventually, you not so bad your way into extremities becoming the norm. And so that's where we're at. But then the icing on the cake is you got to add the racism in it, right? You got to add that racist part. That's the main thing that's going to get all of this jumping and get this all cracking, right? You add the racism and you pass it off as patriotic Christian American values, right? And it creates a bubble where you're literally invincible, right? No one will ever come after you, because no matter how offensive anything that you say comes off as, you can find a way to repurpose it and paint it off as it's not that bad, or what's the problem, or what about? So they don't bring, well, because I've seen some commentary where they're like, well, yeah, they said this about this and that, but what about when Hillary called all the people deplorables? And it's like, these are not quite equatable, because we're literally now at a space where, like, you literally just had a Klan rally at Madison Square Garden. You went to one of the most diverse cities in all of the United States and had a Klan rally, pretty much, right? And so we're now at this space where, because certain things have become normalized, and like I said, we're living in the space of extremities. These extremities have become normalized, and people don't flinch about saying whatever openly racist things they say anymore, because now we're in a space where it's normal, because we continue to give it inch by inch by inch by inch for the last decade, where now the bar and the threshold of what is deemed as inappropriate is so high that nobody ever can reach it. So at this point in time, specifically when we're talking the GOP side, any candidate on that side can literally say and do whatever they want, and it will never be terrible enough to offend some groups. It will never be terrible enough to end a campaign, right? When they talk about like the idea of an October surprise, when you think of everything that's happened in the last month, still not enough to really determine how people think this election is going to be, right? That's how wild we are. So now you have, because he had that comedian, Tony, what's his name? Hinchcliffe. I never heard of him until I got off the plane, right? You call Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. I think what's interesting is there's so many people who don't realize Puerto Rico is a United States territory. Puerto Ricans can vote. Puerto Ricans pay taxes. Puerto Ricans are not technically, Puerto Ricans are Americans. However, again, we're in this era of like the idea of like othering other groups of people. So yeah, go and say there's a floating island of garbage, Puerto Rico, which I do think is actually very interesting that that's the approach that they would take, because Puerto Ricans represent a massive segment of the country. But in addition to that, seeing how y'all dropped the ball with Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria, you would think that that would be a place that you wouldn't really try to go after. But again, Puerto Rico is, a floating island of garbage. And then you heard the jokes about the carving watermelon because he pointed to some black guy in the audience and said, yeah, that's my friend. Yeah, we're carving watermelon. Like, they're doing all these things on purpose, right? Because at this point, they know they can get away with it. They couldn't do this 10, 15 years ago, but right now, because we're in the era of, again, like I said, extremities as a norm, so be it. Yeah, I can say this in New York City of all places in front of 20,000 people, and it's going to be live streaming. It's going to be on national TV, and I'm not even afraid about the repercussions that are going to come, because there probably won't be any, right? That's the move. And then the conversations about what they said about the Latinos and how they're able to breed. And there was a line about, and I don't even know if I want to say, I don't feel like getting demonetized, but long story short, correlating the idea of climaxing with the idea of coming into the border. We'll leave it at that, right? Even I kind of just said the whole thing. But so at this point, there's not a concern for any kind of backlash, right? Because again, it's been normalized over the year. It's the same way that we look at January 6th, right? There are some who have now, even though we all watched this live a few years back. Hell, we were on live during January 6th. I was having a time on this channel, but we saw exactly what happened. We saw the feces on the wall. We saw the blood and the piss and everything else that was scattered all around the Capitol. We saw people that were killed. We saw police getting crushed into the door. We saw police officers getting killed, hit in the head with fire extinguishers, kill Mike Pence. You saw senators and congressmen running down to get to that basement, to get to those tunnels under the building, running for their lives. You saw campus police. You saw U.S. Capitol police officers get beat up, slapped around. You saw all of that, right? And somehow that has turned into, wasn't that bad? You know, some people out there, they were exercising their First Amendment right. They were peaceful protesters. There was love out there, right? So again, that idea of how we have just given an inch and an inch and an inch and an inch to foolery, to the point where, because nobody's ever held to the fire about anything, now this is the norm, right? And same thing. That's why same thing I said, like with Charlottesville, wasn't that bad, right? And so the problem is, you know, where do I want to go with this? I'll say this. We've gotten to a point where there has been enough caving on these issues where now, like, white nationalist talking points, again, it goes back to the idea of being seen as patriotic Christian values, right? And so going back to the Puerto Rico part, what's crazy is, like, you would think that a rally this close to the election, you'd want to make sure that you pull in any voter that is not 100% sure yet, or maybe they're not 10 toes down for Kamala or whoever else they're voting for. So you would think that when you're trying to win additional people over, if this election is as close as they claim it is, I personally don't think the election is close at all. We'll see next week. But you know, when you're talking Pennsylvania, it's a state with a swing state that you will need 450,000 Puerto Ricans live in Pennsylvania, right? North Carolina, another swing state that somebody like Trump may not be able to hold on to. You know, 100,000 Puerto Ricans in North Korea. Jesus, North Carolina. I'm tired, y'all. I told y'all I was flying, right? And still went to work, right? And then still had to do my mentoring stuff today. So it's been a day, right? Michigan, again, 50,000 Puerto Rican residents, right? Florida, big swing state, will be the center of attention temporarily during this election when it's time to count the votes and the polls close. 1.1 million Puerto Ricans. There's a reason why Rick Scott all of a sudden made a statement like, "Oh, wait, this is too far, this is too much." You don't care what they said about Puerto Ricans. You just know you want to make sure that power is still maintained in your state, right? And then New York, 1 million Puerto Ricans. Like, it's interesting that that's the way that you would want to move, right? And here's my thing, because I feel that in the last 2 election cycles, we've drifted so far from policy to the point where everything is about who you have a grievance with, right? Everything, and a lot of the grievances aren't even really rooted in anything. It's just rooted in the fact that because people feel like they're losing something, they need somebody to be mad at. That's really what's happening. So rather than taking focus of what's actually been happening wrong in the country as far as policy, and also how that affects us, or what global entities affect us here as a country, everybody instead wants to find somebody else to be mad at, right? And my thing is this: if your policy is centered on restrictions against groups of people, and that's all you run on, you're not really politicking. You're running a cult, right? You're running a hate group. And at the same time, you're hoping enough people feel exactly the same way that you do, to the point where they will put you in power to eliminate exactly what it is that you hate. That's kind of the space we're in. That's kind of how I've seen Orange Man for like the last good minute. And especially when we're talking white America, right? A lot of people in white America are afraid of losing the power that they think they have. Because understand this, when you're talking race in this country, individually, white people have no power in this country, right? They don't have the power to do anything. However, collectively and systemically, they're in control of everything, and they know that. And so somebody like Orange Man represents the idea of maintaining that feeling of power, maintaining that specific status quo. Now, understand, every politician represents some element of a status quo, right? Even when you're talking about this whole, what you call the American social experiment, that in itself is one, you know, status quo that exists. But when you're talking the idea of whiteness specifically, there's one party that has latched onto it and has made that their talking point, and made that the driving force behind their politics and what they run on and who they want to appeal to, which is the reason why when you look at the demographics of who's voting for who when in regards to race, one group has a disproportionately represented amount of white folks compared to the other, which happens to have a better mix of a bit of everybody else, right? But when you're talking about the other side, it's like white galore, featuring a few other folks who decided that they align with those viewpoints as well, right? And so I want to go a little bit deeper than that, right? Because what's interesting when you're talking again about that idea of that collective power, right? Or what people would collectively like to power against or power for. What I find so interesting, because like I said, Orange Man makes a lot of white America feel empowered. So even if everything is going wrong in their life, as long as they can hold on to whiteness, they will take that and run with it because it makes them feel that they are running something. It makes them feel that in this space and time, they still have power. So, you know, while taxes did go up under Orange Man, you know, education budgets were cut. There was deregulation. We've seen all these trains and stuff derailing because of that. We've seen what's also been happening in regard to processing plants and everything since all this deregulation, right? We saw how U.S. farming literally collapsed and farmers had to be bailed out. We also saw how black farmers were left out of that bailout, right? We lost the trade war and all. Healthcare has also got more expensive under the last man administration. We saw what happened with the rise of police killings, right? White America did not care because at the end of the day, Orange Man still made them feel empowered. So no matter what may have been going wrong in this country or what may have been going wrong in their lives individually, they still feel a connection to this man, right? And this is why they just move different as far as that whole movement. It's different, right? I've always said people should not be fans of politicians because politicians work for us, right? I have whoever I get behind, but you're not going to see me wearing their shirts and hats and be ready. Well, yeah, I don't have any Obama stuff from back in college, right? But you're not going to see me out here running and looking for a fight with people if they don't have on the political have somebody that I like, right? I'm not going out in these streets trying to troll and get on people's nerves. I don't have a big giant flag for whoever I don't have a big giant like Joe Biden or Kamala or Obama flag hanging from my car, and I drive with my music as loud as I can, playing some kind of F the Republicans kind of song to get attention. Like, I don't care enough, right? At this point, I vote for who I vote for because the policy aligns with whatever it is that I support, and I keep it moving. And then when I get in office, they can catch all the smoke from me that they're going to get if they do stuff that I don't like. That's where it's at. But when it comes to Orange Man and the kind of hold that he has over white America, he is literally these people's God, right? That's where we're at, right? He symbolizes, what white America wants, right? And it's interesting. That's why there's even an emotional connection to this man with a lot of his supporters, especially when you're talking MAGA. That's why why do you think all these ballot boxes are being set on fire right now? Right? Folks are going to do everything in their power to make sure that Kamala does not have a shot, right? That's kind of what's going on with that. And so really and I've said this before, going back to what I said about the idea of individualism, the only time white America collectively is on the same page is when it's time to be racist. Other than that, everybody's on their own page, right? And so because of that, right, they see him as the person who was bold enough to say what a lot of them were collectively thinking. Even though we live in a very individualistic society, collectively, he aligns with exactly what a lot of them want. He aligns with exactly what a lot of them feel and believe, and he speaks their language, and that's why they go so hard for him. And that's why everything that happened at that rally for them, nothing was an issue. Everybody was like, every racist joke that came out, all the people, I'm like, I don't see what's so damn funny. Like, Lord, my God, right? And so understand, there's a whole lot that just, I don't know. It's interesting because, like I said, our politics has not really become about politics, it's become about movements and getting over on the other side or giving it to the other side, making others suffer. That's the idea. You're gonna own the left or the socialist or the right. It's just a bunch of nonsense, right? And people have kind of lost their way in regard to actually looking at what policy. And again, like I said some videos ago, the conversation of cause and effect. And this is not to say that there's a perfect party that exists or there's a perfect candidate, because every candidate that runs is going to have flaws. Everybody is not going to get what they want under any candidate, because again, when you're trying to represent a country of 335 million people, there's no way to please everybody. Hell, even YouTube, you can't even please everybody. You can make the best YouTube video ever with the best content. There's still going to be at least one person who don't like what you got going, right? That's reality. And so, I do want to say this too, because I think we're now in a space, because since there's so much conversation about all of the groups of people that are ruining the country, because that's kind of the narrative that we've heard. And that's really what that rally all was about. That rally to me was like an idea of uplifting white America to feel good about being white and F everybody else. That's what I got from it. Even though Byron Donald's goofy behind would still be in there looking like an idiot. Knowing he's lost in space over there, but enjoy. Them dang grifting checks must be really, really good. But, because even when you talk the conversation like the whole immigration, right? That's one of the big talking points. And it's gotten to a point where that's not even a nuanced conversation anymore, right? Yes, the border needs to have the fixes, and there needs to be some adjustments to the policy so that you can kind of fix what's wrong with our immigration system. But the idea of thinking that just yanking 20 million people out the country and shipping them wherever is going to fix everything, folks got another thing coming. And let's just paint that picture for 1 second, because there's also a lot of black folks who hopped on that as well, right? Understand. Let's just say Orange Man gets in, and day one, right? He gets in there. He got the National Guard and Army going house to house, yanking people out, putting them in trucks, shipping them out, right? You pull 20 million people out of the country. What do you think is actually about to happen next? First of all, in addition to the fact that the economy is going to collapse, because no matter how you may possibly feel about whoever is here, a lot of them contribute to the economy. They pay taxes, and they also, and this is not to try to say that people are limited to whatever jobs they have, but we know that we're talking the food supply chain. A lot of that is coming through the lens or through the work of undocumented immigrants at the moment in time. So one, we're going to have an economy collapse. Two, the food supply chain is going to be a freaking mess, right? People are going to be mad. All kind of things are not going to be going well because there's an entire workforce that has been depleted. What do you think happens next? Now they need somebody else to blame. Next in line, back to black folks. It's going to be something we did wrong. And you know what they're going to do? That 13th Amendment still kicks in. So they're going to find ways to just get people who are already in the judicial system to just go and do the work of what the undocumented workers were doing. It's because people think, well, when you kick them out, there will be jobs. No, because nobody wants to pay the rates that nobody wants to pay the rates that citizens get. That's why undocumented workers, there's all these companies that hire them because they can lowball them because those people are just happy to be here, right? So instead of even paying them, we could just use everybody that's in the judicial system and in the prison industrial complex. So it's almost like convict leasing all over again. So yeah, you kick them 20 million people out, and then we'll just find more ways to incarcerate more people. And we know who's going to be the first in line to go. Right? And next thing you know, y'all gonna be out there picking oranges, right? But that's fine though, because y'all got all them people up out of here. So you have to handle things. Like, understand that the conversation of what is wrong with the U.S. economy does not start and stop with immigration. That is one piece of a very expansive pie. And that pie got it got a special crust. It has a special filling. It got kind of special sprinkles. It was sprayed in the pan with a special kind of pan, right? It had a special kind of margin that was spread over the top. There's all kind of stuff going on with this piece of pie, but we have spent so much time putting all the effort and energy into one segment of a conversation about this economy and thinking that by kicking out 20 million people, that will fix everything. And people are literally basing their vote on that one issue. And they're saying the hell with education, the hell with healthcare. Who cares about housing? Who cares about women's reproductive rights? Who cares about different groups of people when it comes to marriage rights? Who cares about any of that? Inflation, none of that matters. Just get all them people out of here and we will be good. Things will be great. All right, I'm going to F around and find out. Let me pause for a sec, read some comments. But no, as far as that rally, and I'm not done. I'm still going into some of these people with this rally, but I'm going to break this up into different sections. And I think even, too, going back to, again, that idea of whiteness being the center of everything. There's a reason why, what's his name, said the whole idea of Americans should be in America. You know who they're talking about. It's not all these other groups. It's only one group of people they're talking about. Everybody else is collateral. I don't care how well you speak the language or play the game of whiteness, and you're not white, eventually they're going to remind you exactly who you're supposed to be. Now, I understand, especially with the immigration conversation, yes, there are things that need to be fixed. There are things that need to be addressed. I think when it comes to different pockets of pools of money that cities and states work with, they need to make sure that when they're allocating money for certain things that they're not pulling away from other programs and disenfranchising people that have already been here legally. I hear that point. But again, for me, the idea of yanking 20 million people out is not going to fix our issues. And at the same time, what if it was the other way around and they just said, all right, all 20 of y'all got a path to citizenship. Now you're all citizens. What's the next grievance folks are going to have, right? Because we're in a space where rather than Americans looking at the fact that America as a whole has stopped investing in itself, because unfortunately we keep electing politicians that suck, right? And so for the last 40 plus years, greed has taken over the idea of American prosperity. But it's not the idea of American prosperity for everybody. It's the idea of American prosperity for only the rich, right? So you defunded the public schooling systems, right? To the point where you create ideas of creating standardized testing that will punish schools that don't meet the requirements. And then when they don't meet the requirements, you pull funding from those schools to make them somehow perform even better. No Child Left Behind. And we saw how No Child Left Behind worked, right? According to No Child Left Behind, by December of 2014, every child was supposed to be proficient in reading and math. We never met that threshold. And school districts were punished. Money was pooled and reallocated. And then we already know that they're privatizing our public education right now. That's one of the main things. Like the thing, I don't think people have really read what's in Project 2025. There is so much stuff in there I think people need to really go back and look at it, right? But yeah, so we stopped prioritizing education. We stopped prioritizing healthcare. Even the idea of healthcare, right? The fact that universal healthcare could have been a thing so long ago, but because there was the idea and the possibility that it would also be given to Black folks, the idea was pulled back in the 60s. Like, that's where we live, right? So there's all these different things where the U.S. could have invested in itself, invested in its infrastructure, invested in the people, but rather they spent more time trying to take away from groups of people that they felt were undeserving, groups of people that they felt were second-class citizens, specifically Black folks, specifically everybody else who falls in the brown category, but starting off with Black folks, starting with us. They were trying to find every reason possible to not give us anything. And so instead of investing, they kept finding ways to close doors. The minute schools got integrated, what did public colleges do? Start charging. Remember, public colleges used to be free. Nope. You Negroes going on there, we got to start charging stuff, right? And then the private schools became more exclusive and became more expensive, right? And you had all these different programs and everything else that were aimed at like specifically to be elite, but really the code word for elite was just white, right? And then you get all these different programs, right? You get the gifted program. This idea of somehow trying to put a lot, because initially when we're talking the gifted program, it wasn't for us, right? It was a way to highlight the idea of a superiority complex with white kids, and then Black kids were put in disproportionate rates in remedial programs. Like, there's all these different things that took place in the United States rather than investing in the people, rather than investing in the schools and infrastructure and healthcare and education and food and sexual health and everything else that you can think of. No, we're just gonna keep stripping and stripping and stripping and stripping, right? And as things got worse, the only thing you can do is create the narrative that all the things that are happening in this country are happening because of this group of people or that group of people or what people aren't doing. And at the same time, while the US is kind of downgrading in the entire element of when you're talking quality of life, the rest of the world has been evolving. There's a reason why, like, when you go to certain countries, you know, it's a totally different experience. Now, I will also say that a lot of other countries kind of tend to have a dominant race, the ones that you see thriving the most. And so because of that, some of these countries, like a place like Japan, we talk about how advanced Japan is. One of the things that works in a place like Japan's favor is the majority of their citizens are Japanese. So they don't have any groups of people that they hate. Well, they do. But as far as like, they're not saying no to the high-speed rail system because they're afraid Black folks are going to be on it, right? They're not going and saying we need to build a freeway, but where do we do? I don't know, tear down that Black neighborhood so we can build it. That's not a conversation in a lot of countries that have different populations where the population is a little bit more uniform, right? And so because they had more time to focus on the people and not who they had beef with, some of these countries have been able to flourish. On the flip side over here, because we want to paint everybody to be the enemy, you don't want your enemy getting anything, right? And so we've watched people vote against their own interests to ensure that other groups of people don't have anything. That is wild to me. And that's what we're living in right now. And that's the excitement behind the Orange Man and his movement. That's what I get behind. That's what I get from it. When I think of what policy is actually there, the majority of what's pushed and celebrated is all about what's being taken away or who won't be getting what or who's going to be getting up out of here. Interesting. Y'all vote for who you want to vote for. Do what you want to do. All right, let's read some comments. And I ain't fighting with y'all in these comments. I'm telling y'all that right now. Anyway, a whole dang Klan rally in New York. Imagine that. All right. Somebody said people would say they're taking Roseanne's free speech now, probably. It makes me think too of even Elon Musk, right? Think about when he bought Twitter. The main reason he wanted to get Twitter, or what he presented to be the main reason. Like, the main reason, it goes a whole lot deeper than that. But his argument was free speech is under attack. I'm going to make sure that free speech is safe on Twitter, right? I'm going to get rid of the bots, and we're going to make sure that people's right to freedom of speech is protected. And look at what he's done to Twitter, right? They're playing in our faces. All right, let's see here. What up, Belize gal? She said, hi, chat. Finally catch a live. Tony Hinchcliffe is controversial, but funny. It's shock entertainment. I hear that, but I think at a point in time right now when we're talking politics and policy, the kind of shock jock comedy doesn't quite work in this moment because, unfortunately, we have pockets and collectives of people in society that don't play with the full deck. And even when people make these kind of jokes or whatever they do, there's other people who latch onto this and make it their reality. And this is how you end up with like Pizzagate, where you have the guy who shows up in DC because he was under the assumption that there was some kind of child trafficking going on in the basement of a pizza parlor. And he shows up in there with a gun. And this building didn't even have a basement, right? That's kind of the issue that's there. And it's also noticeable that everybody that he went after everybody except white folks. I said, well, okay, interesting. Because I will say, we have shows like a South Park or a Family Guy that technically go after everybody. They're funny because nobody's off limits. But I think the difference is those are shows that kind of sit in the space of only entertainment, and they don't really influence policy or politics. Like, I think with this rally and what you saw, a lot of those talking points, a lot of those people, the mindsets and the thinking, this is going to be the thinking that's on paper in policy, right? So even when people be like, well, Trump said he's not a part of 2025, look at who he runs with. The whole orchestrator of 2025 is like his road dog. And he's already highlighted how that person would be in his cabinet. So I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. Let's see. And again, I hate to be that person, but even when you're talking like what happened with the Holocaust, that's how it started. Everything was like, it wasn't so bad. You know, it was just a joke. You know, yeah. Well, he is kind of making a little sense. Okay, well, yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah. You know, my business was doing better before they got over here. You know, as a matter of fact, I think they're the reason why stuff is. You know what? Yeah. Start labeling all. They need to start wearing a star or something so we can identify who the problem is, so we know not to. And then it goes and it goes. Like, it starts that way. Eventually, like, the threshold only just gets worse and worse because it gets higher and higher, and that means the tolerance for extremities becomes more normalized. Let's see. Trotley said, Calvin, if Trump is really out here calling America a trash dump, like he just went after Detroit and then you go to campaign in Detroit. Okay. It paves the way for someone like that guy making those comments about Puerto Rico. Nobody should be shocked. He needs to get out. And again, going back to Puerto Rico, I'm going to say this too. If you want to call this place an island of floating garbage, well, one, Puerto Rico, when you look at, first of all, the setup of economies and policy with how we affect commerce in Puerto Rico is some BS, right? Puerto Rico was better off before the U.S. took it as a territory. Puerto Rico took it as a territory, or the U.S. took the Puerto Rico as a territory, and then pretty much neglected the island, right? And so there's so many things that they don't have the agency to do as a country or as a territory because they fall under the guise of being a U.S. territory. And unfortunately, the U.S. is not taking care of that territory. It's kind of like So, you know, one of the things I've always said, and this is a little left field, but I've always said in music, I don't like the idea of entertainers managing other entertainers while still trying to be entertainers themselves, because they'll never be able to give those entertainers that they're working with the kind of energy they can give to their career because they're busy with their career. That's kind of what has happened with Puerto Rico and even of Guam, right? The U.S. kind of neglects Puerto Rico on a lot of things. The fact that Puerto Rico's power system is still set up like it's 1940 is a problem. And again, they're paying taxes and everything else like that. This is why when Hurricane Maria hit, the island was out of power for weeks and weeks and weeks, because the entire power system really should have been kind of revamped and enhanced years ago, right? But no, there's no effort to try to fix anything over there, right? There's a lot of people who don't even realize it's a U.S. territory. They look at it like its own sovereign country. And we affect so much of their commerce and everything that happens with even their central banking system, where literally they're never going to be able to thrive economically until we get out the way as the United States, unless we realign what that policy is going to be with how we run that country, right? Like, there's a lot of cause and effect when it comes to Puerto Rico in regard to it being a U.S. territory and how the U.S. has kind of neglected it, right? So that's kind of one of the things that affects Puerto Rico. So then to sit there and talk about it being a garbage island, or, you know, island garbage, whatever they were saying, floating, the U.S. is responsible for that. So like, it's kind of like redlining and then totally divesting from the red line regions of town and then calling them the hood and then talking about the violence and the crime, but there's no investment in the redlined areas ever. Same kind of thing. All right, let's see. Diane Angel said a lot of Latinos will vote and still vote for Trump. That's because a lot of them still see themselves as white. Like the interesting thing about the Latino community is because like Latino and Hispanic is not technically a race, but more so an ethnicity, right? Or a combination of ethnicities. A lot of white Latinos, white Hispanics still see themselves as white. Yeah, they speak Spanish, but you know, a lot of them have the luxury of passing as white because if they don't open their mouth, you don't know what they are, right? So a lot of them, a lot of times will align with white talking points. And we talked about that before, where a lot of people, because it's not just the Latino community, but when people come to the United States, people want to thrive, people want to prosper. And what they are told is be like the best of the best in the country. Now, who's marketed as the best of the best in the country? I don't know who white America's PR team is, but that's what has been presented to the world. So even people who come from the continent of Africa, or some who come from the Caribbean, or those who come from India, all these different places, a lot of times you have some people who still come here specifically to be white, right? They come here, and even though they may look a certain way, they align with white talking points. Look at Bobby Jindal from Louisiana, right? Remember when Bobby Jindal was still in office and his official portrait came out and he was like 20 shades lighter, right? So unfortunately, yeah, you're going to have people who see things different ways, and there's different things that people will kind of turn a blind eye to that's not going to bother them as much, or they won't be offended by it if it means that there's an idea of prosperity, right? And even unfortunately, there's people who are born and raised in the United States who share those same talking points or share those same ideas where the hell with everybody else, I got to get mine, right? So yeah, I still think the Latino vote will still be about the same, about 60-30, 60 for Democrats, 30 for Republicans. Maybe shift, maybe it might be like 55-35, but yeah. All right. Let's see. Somebody said politicians are not supposed to be worshipped. Exactly. You're supposed to come in, do whatever you do, and get out. And the next person comes in, do what they do, and they get out. All right. Somebody said, when you're trying to govern a country as large and diverse as ours, you're going to hold a lot of contradictory positions and piss people off. Like I said, this politics in America is complicated. There's too many of us, right? It's 330 million people. Again, the idea of all of the power being in the hands of, a small pocket of people is a lot when we're talking about who's in charge. Like, it's a lot. It's hard. Like, I think that's one of the flaws that exists within the Democratic Party as well. They kind of are the party that has the umbrella of everybody else. For me, this is just how I see it. I see the Republican Party as the party that makes sure white people get whatever they want, right? And I see the Democratic Party as the party that tries to take under everybody else. But the problem is everybody else doesn't all want the same thing. And then everybody else collectives fight about whatever it is that they want. And then a lot of times, a lot of stuff doesn't get done. Or some groups get kind of left out, or some groups get taken advantage of, or, they're not seen even though they put in a whole lot of work, right? And so that's why we have this flawed two-party system. Yeah, politics in the U.S. is a mess. Let's see. Please, Calvin, answer my question. I would really appreciate it if you told me please, Calvin, answer my question. I would really appreciate it if you told me what do you think about her telling us she won't do anything. This must be about Kamala. Okay, if this is about that clip where she says, let me set this clear. I'm just going to something, I'm not doing anything. Okay, that clip that they keep trying to utilize where they're claiming she said she wouldn't do anything for Black people. The clip initially is saying that the idea is in the United States, because people are always working against Black people, it actually doesn't benefit the country. Like, the country loses out through the idea of racism. And the argument that she was making is that when you do something that is inclusive to everybody, everybody wins. Or when you do something specifically that, long story short, if Black people are doing well, everybody else does well. And that conversation that she was making in that had nothing to do with her saying, I'm not going to do anything only for Black people. She was saying that the idea of, even if she did something that helped Black people, when Black people win, it benefits the entire country. But people took that clip and ran with it and made it seem like I ain't doing nothing for none of y'all. And y'all have been running with that clip since 2018. All right. At some point, and I get it, I'm not sitting here saying that you can't critique and question these politicians, but make sure that the critiques and the questions are coming with all of the right context. Like, I think people should go back and actually watch that full clip, not the one that they keep circulating on Twitter every day. Right. And again, like I said, no politician is going to be perfect. And I don't know why we keep getting in this space where we think we're going to get this revolutionary candidate that makes it to the presidential stage. That's not happening in the United States, unfortunately. All the candidates that are really down about it, that could really do all the things that we would love, they get stopped way before they even make it to a stage. They get outspent, right? They get outbidded on. The two larger party systems push them out the way, right? And then you end up with what I call kind of like the status quo candidates that will make sure that the United States as a country is able to still just function. And that's really about it. And then you hope and pray that one of these candidates give you a little something. That's kind of, unfortunately, it sucks. This is why I said, going back to that idea of I would like more people to start getting, and it's hard to even do it because there's not even the kind of money that's there. That's why I say money has to be taken out of politics to really see this system fix itself. But the point that I was going to say was that I'd really like to see a lot more people pushing more homegrown candidates that really are and represent the voice of the people. But the problem is there's never enough money to get them to that final stretch. Like if you knew how much money goes into running for office, let alone for president, there's so many great people out there that have great ideas that we will never hear of because they couldn't even make it to win the school board. They couldn't win the state Senate election. They couldn't win in the state house. You know, like that's the part that sucks, which is why I've been saying like the two-party system is some BS. But in this moment in time right now, where there's an election in a week from now, this isn't the conversation to be had. But this can be a conversation for like 2028, 2032, right? Man. But yeah. Anyway, somebody said, I feel Democrats and Kamala's team specifically have made a gigantic mistake going more conservative route. They lost momentum with the progressive base. You know, I think it's an interesting thing because it's not even just Kamala. I think the progressive movement, unfortunately, doesn't have the backing in regard to numbers. And what people have seen is we've seen a lot of really progressive candidates lose in the last 3-4 years. And so I think if we're talking to DNC, to me, it sounds like they're trying to go a little bit more back to the middle. They know that they can probably pull some people who may have been Republican that liked Trump, but can't, they're done. They know that they can probably pull some of those people, but they know if they go too far over to one side, those people jump ship. This is what it's like. We're in this weird era where like the parties are starting to really merge in certain things. Because even when you're talking that border policy is very far to the right. Democrats compromised and caved a lot on that border policy to kind of get Republicans to get on board. And then everybody was on board. But then guess who said, no, don't sign it because Joe doesn't need any wins under my watch. Wait till I get back in there. I'll fix it. So interesting times we're in. Somebody said the U.S. empire is on decline and has been. And I think one of the things too is, and I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday, like, I think there's a fear that a lot of Americans have where if America is no longer number one at a lot of things, it means the end of people's livelihood. And I think that scares people. I think the idea that, you know, probably within the next decade, China will have a higher GDP than us. They probably will have a larger military force than us and a bunch of other things. I think things like that freak people out because we're already, doesn't help that the U.S. is like this big giant military complex, right? We got bases in 800 different locations outside of the United States. So like, I think all that kind of keeps people freaked out. And there's this fear that in the same way that there's a collective fear that white Americans have about black folks, if black folks ever came into power, that we're going to do to them what they did to us. I think there's a fear that the same thing would happen to the United States by other countries. And that's why people fight so hard to maintain and hold on to this kind of imperialistic setup the United States has, right? This is why even when you're talking our unique relationship with Israel right now, and everything that's happening with Gaza, you see how funny everybody's moving with that, right? That idea of trying to maintain that stability because Israel's located in a place where everybody around them got smoke for them because of a lot of different things that they've been doing over the last 50, 60 years. And then because of the treaty that the United States is in, it's a slippery slope, right? So when it comes to like what's happening over there, we never get a real concrete answer. You kind of get a happy word salad that keeps everybody happy with, like, it's a lot going on here. Anyway. Let's see here. Y'all got a whole lot in here today. We still on topic one. Let's see. Somebody said I saw an NAACP poll that shows black men's support for Trump is decreasing. I've always thought support was overstated. I feel like, honestly, I feel like the numbers are still about the same. I know they were trying to say he might pull about 30%. No, he's not pulling 30% of the black male vote. No, I feel like he might. It is sit between maybe 12 and 18%, kind of where it's always been, right? I see it as that. What up, Brielle Knox? Let's see. No, I would like to get to my topic here. Let's see. What did Dr. Phil say, dude? He's next to get lashed in a minute. Give me a second. Um, Somebody said, no, that's not how that went. She was asked about reparations for Black people. Wait, are we not being honest here? Am I missing something? Actually, even with the reparations conversation, even just a few weeks or months ago, she was saying she supports the idea of a study on reparations. Now, I will say, I think we're about studied out. We've been studying for 40 years. But I'm telling you, that clip that everybody keeps referencing, nobody plays the full one. Everybody plays right where it says, let's set this clear. We're going to talk about this, get this straight. It always starts from right there. Nobody listens to that 40 seconds that came before it. My suggestion is to just listen to the full thing. And at the same time, again, I am 100% on board with the idea of, yeah, y'all can do a whole lot more for Black people collectively, especially since you screwed our lives over generationally. I am 100% on board. But the thing that I find so interesting is Orange Man has literally not even that, literally put out posts saying, if Kamala and them get in there, y'all get reparations will be given out. He painted reparations to be a bad thing. That automatically shows me that reparations will never happen with Orange Man. It's not happening with Republicans either. And I said this 2 or 3 lines ago, you probably won't really get Democrats that are going to run and push for it either because everybody's afraid of the price tag, right? And so at this point, it becomes a question of who do you actually have any leverage with? But when one side is automatically saying, absolutely hell no, y'all not getting it, forget that, right? They don't even want Black folks to even live in their neighborhoods. Where do you think they're about to give us anything, right? So it's kind of like, this goes back to what I was saying, until we have more representation in these positions of power, we're going to be having this conversation on and on and on, just like they've been having since the 80s, right? And until there are more politicians that really represent the ideas of what people want specifically, we're going to keep having the same issue. But the other problem is that really, really slippery slope of race, because we're not a large enough collective of people or voter electorate in this country. Unfortunately, for any Black candidate that's running, when you run on a super pro blackity black, we gonna get it in campaign kind of thing, unless you can get every single Black person to, well, it's not even that, because depending on where you live, unfortunately, you still need a segment of other populations to get behind you. And sadly, because people fear the idea of Black anything, there's a lot of people who always jump ship. I think that's why Chambers wasn't able to really get as far as he could have gotten in Louisiana, because I think he might have not even scared, but there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, he represents something I don't want to get behind. So no, we're not getting behind Chambers, right? Like, I think we're getting, there's what we want, then there's a conversation of nuance, and then there's a conversation of exactly what the actual stakes are and who is the electorate that you're having to work with. And I think sometimes people leave out the conversation of who is the electorate that you have to work with. Like, even with Obama, I've already said Obama is a candidate to me that stayed away from race, was scared of it, never really talked about it. Even though he was Black and had a Black wife, or had a Black wife and he was a Kenyan, like, he never really ever talked race. And if he ever talked race, it was a very John Legend, coffee club, safe for Starbucks kind of conversation, right? And even then, he still couldn't secure the white vote at all, when they benefited greatly under him, both times. Race in this country is super complicated. And I think sometimes when we live in our own echo chamber of how we see things, I think sometimes we forget exactly just how chaotic it is outside of that chamber of what's happening, which is why there's a lot of folks out here stressing about the election, because they're confused. They're not sure where people are going to go, right? Anyway, we got to keep it moving, y'all. Somebody said, hey, Calvin, why do you think so many Black men online are caping for Trump? You got some there's going to be people who are going to, one, we already know Black folks aren't a monolith. That's one. But two, you also have a lot of folks who are posing as Black folks on the internet that are not Black. Did y'all just see that article about, what was his name? This massive account that had like 300,000 followers, to the point where even Ted Cruz was retweeting this person. And it turned out to be this white man this whole time. He was posing as a Black person for years and had all, what is that account called? I'm going to find it, because I said, excuse me? Of course. And I mean, you see this all the time. Or think about that politician that was pretending to be a Black woman and was a white man. Like, you have a lot of folks who are pretending to be Black and stuff. Like, first of all, they already know Black folks, because we already have a grievance with this country, with everything that's been happening for decades and decades. They already know we're the most vulnerable demographic. It's easy to get us to sway in whatever direction if you tell us enough of what we want to hear. I shouldn't say that, but that's how it kind of comes off. But that's what they believe, right? And so there's all kind of movements to kind of push the whole disinformation. That's why I said some years back when we talked about the 2020 election and the 13 candidates that were running at the time, when we're talking about the disinformation that was put out, why do you think 78% of the disinformation that was put out against Kamala Harris? And she wasn't even a front runner. She barely even had a foot in the race, right? But again, 78% of the disinformation that was put out during the 2020 election was centered around Kamala. And then the other 12 candidates split the other bit, right? So there's conversations to be had. People are trying to utilize the grievances that Black people have with a lot of things wrong in the United States and use it as a way to either get folks to not show up and vote or to go and give a shot to the other side and somehow ignore all of the anti-Black everything on that side. But if they can give you this one or two things, then that's fine, especially if it means other groups, specifically if you want to push the conversation about immigrants, you make them suffer a little bit, then yeah, you might be able to win some folks over. Like that's where it's at. I'm just at a space where there's going to have to be nuance. I think multiple things can be true at once, and I think we're on this seesaw of this or that, no in between, no wiggle room, and I think that's why our politics has become so extreme, right? It's just a mess, right? Let's see. No, we don't need to be satisfied with the all lives matter approach. I'm just telling y'all to look at what the electorate is, all right? Okay. No, not Sean. Oh, God, I forgot about Sean King. No, not Sean King. It's somebody who I don't remember the name of the account, but it was like one of those names. It's those accounts that always have the names like Black. All I have was Black. Like Black Warrior 22, something like that. One of those kind of names, right? And it was somebody who had been posing as a Black male for years and posting all kind of disinformation, trying to get Black folks to align with whatever they were saying, and it turned out to be a white person. Been happening for the longest, right? Let's see. Somebody was saying, please talk about how Chambers is online every day, letting it be known that Black people are not turning out to vote in Louisiana. They need to be ashamed of themselves. Now, I'll say this too, because there's been some conversations about early voting and the numbers are not as high. I think we also need to remember we're also not in the pandemic. So when people were doing, there was more mail-in ballots, right? There were more absentee ballots. And even with the idea of early voting in 2020, a lot of people were doing early voting because it meant you wouldn't be in a line with as many people because we were still right smack in the middle of COVID. We still technically are. But like, so that idea of people thinking of their own safety and health, people were trying to go and vote when there wasn't going to be the massive crowds. Like I think I remember, I want to say LA County had a setup where senior citizens got to go at a certain time. Like they had all these different things to try to spread it out sporadically where you didn't have everybody in one district trying to go and vote at the same time. I feel like the voting numbers will still match up by the time you get to general. But now that there's not the need of people having to take extra precautions because of health reasons, it'll kind of go back to how it used to be where most people voted on voting day, right? So there's that. Yeah. Illegal immigrants are not getting reparations. All right, let's see. I would just like us to, from now on, people, I just need y'all to go get 3 sources for everything. Do me a favor, make my job a little easier. Let's see. Somebody said, what does playing both sides of the strategy for centuries teach about hypocrisy? It's not about playing both sides. I think what it is, what you see one side doing right now is trying to pull in a few folks that they think they can have some leverage with, right? Like, I feel like when you have a political party, right, one kind of sits on one side of the spectrum, one kind of sits on the other. Every now and then they might shift a little bit towards the other. A little bit. They never will go all the way to the other side, all the way to the other side, but they will kind of, there's wiggle room, right? Because as times evolve and policies evolve and viewpoints evolve on things, so do the parties. So think about even something like the idea of same-sex marriage. You go back 30 years ago, Democrats and Republicans both like, hell no, nope, man and a woman, and they start talking about the Bible, right? We fast forwarded 30 plus years. Now, you know, same-sex marriage is legal. One side is like, yeah, okay, well, the precedent has changed. Okay, let everybody do what they want to do. The other side is, oh, no, that's against the Bible. And so it's, our politics is going to keep shifting. Like the thing that I said before is like nothing is precedent in this country, especially when it comes to race. So there's always going to be moving parts, right? And this is why even with politics, with people running, look at how different it is now when folks run that are trying to secure the Black vote. Back in the day, all you had to do, and this is not a diss to the earlier generations, but like you still had people who were about it, and it was like, make sure the policy aligns or you're not getting my vote. But there were a lot of folks who never had any kind of conversation or any kind of policy for Black anything. All they did was show up and do the electric slide, have a cookout, get a few rappers and cool singers to endorse them. That's all they did for Black outreach. And they would get it. Right? You play a little saxophone on Arsenio Hall and you got in the door. Right? You know, you go and, you know, you quote a few little hip hop lyrics there and you get in the door, right? You know, you're Hillary and you go on the Ellen show and that used to work. That doesn't fly anymore at all, right? The first thing everybody does now is quickly bring up the conversation of pandering. That's the pandering. So now everybody knows that's not going to be the way to win over the Black vote collectively anymore. You can just can't show up with your favorite rapper and start rapping a song or doing a little. No, people want to see something. People want to see some policy. So times change, things evolve. Anyway, guys, we got to move on. Let's see. Somebody said, not the all of me loves all of you, man, catching strays. I'm just saying, when I think of John Legend, I just see him as just safe, right? So yeah. Okay, let's see here. Oh yeah, let's get to Dr. Phil. So Dr. Phil was also at the rally, right? And what was interesting, there was a segment where he starts talking about, you know, Americans, we're tired of DEI and people need to work hard. You know, the whole, it's a white nationalist talking point. It's this idea of presenting the idea that, again, whiteness has always been the standard and everybody else who gets in the door got in because white folks did them a favor. Right? That's always kind of the thing, right? And what's so interesting to me, like when you look at somebody like a Dr. Phil and a lot of people in white America, I'm like, y'all really just have become super delusional in how the world works. Like when it's all said and done, almost everything you have, right? Even the foundations of the generational wealth that you all have accumulated, like that's from the backbone and the oppression of Black folks. That's from the oppressions of other groups of people. That's from terrible policy that left people out and only let you in. And then wealth was accumulated. And then as it got accumulated, you didn't say, okay, that's enough. Let's make it even now because we got what we got. No, y'all doubled down and put up another gate and sealed another wall and built some more ladders and then climbed them and then burned the ladders and then looked down and threw rocks on the people down at the ground and said, well, why are you still getting hit by rocks? Why don't you take shelter? Right? That's kind of like how y'all have been. So it's kind of like, okay, interesting, right? So folks will always have these conversations about how hard white Americans work, but then they're silent on the conversation of Black people being left out of the New Deal. Literally a government handout because everybody's life fell apart during the Great Depression as a result of greed within banking, right? So you had the elite class screw over the working and middle class, and then government comes and gives them a big giant bailout, government handouts. And who's left out of the New Deal? Black folks, right? So white folks get a head start. There's no conversation about Black folks being left out of the GI Bill, right? So World War I and World War II veterans, Korean War veterans did not get to receive any element of GI nothing. Right? But that GI Bill helped a lot of white kids go to school, helped them build homes, helped them plant the seeds and build and help create what would become the middle class in the 1950s and 60s. Right? There's no conversation about that. Right? And it's just very interesting because then, Dr. Phil, please. Like literally, you got in the door from a Black woman. Right. And now I will say this is why I be side-eyeing Oprah too, because I'm like, Oprah, some of the people you put on between Dr. Phil and Oz and that man that walked on the hot coals that's now in jail. Like, Oprah, you need to do a better job of who you put out there. Because like I look at like Dr. Oz, who one of the things that's interesting, I always say this in politics. You can tell when somebody's really about it by how they move after they lose. Right. When people are really about the people and really about making things better for everybody because they're passionate about it, a lot of times when they lose, you don't see the end of them. They will find other things. Look at Stacey Abrams, right? She lost first time, said, well, I'm going to still do whatever. And she started trying to get more registered voters in the state of Georgia and then created more of a national campaign. Ran again, still lost, but she's still active, right? She still has a passion of what it is that she wants to get behind. You have a lot of people who lose and lose and lose, but stay out there, or they try to train up another candidate that's like their mentee, or they get behind a coal. They do all these different things. But then you have others who run and they claim that they're so about the people and they're going to help us. And when they lose, you never see them again. When's the last time y'all saw Herschel Walker? When's the last time y'all saw Dr. Oz? Kelly Loeffler, right? I ain't seen that. Caitlyn Jenner, Remember, Caitlyn Jenner ran for governor. We ain't seen Caitlyn since, as far as politics. All these people magically just stopped caring, right? This is why I'm like, you can always kind of read through who's really full of it and who's also been kind of planted to try to just push a different narrative. And it was funny because I remember Dr. Oz when he was running for Pennsylvania, and he went in the grocery store and was grabbing all these different foods and was talking about how expensive they were and what the prices were. And I'm like, okay, now you're one of the people, huh? All right, interesting. But anyway, getting back to my point, with Dr. Phil, what's so interesting is like, again, that's one of those conversations where it's that conversation of merit. And like I said before, I said a lot of white America sees himself as the standard of everything, the standard of intelligence, the standard of all things in the United States. And when you see yourself as a standard, you never see yourself as anybody who has to evolve or work on yourself or grow or learn anything, because you see yourself as being the person that does everything right. That's how white America has been moving since forever and a day. And the people who are not doing everything right is everybody else. So when everybody else ends up in these positions that folks don't think they're supposed to be in, they want to call it DEI, right? So when that bridge collapsed in Baltimore, which had nothing to do with the mayor, what's the first thing they said? Baltimore's DEI mayor. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? The mayor was elected by the people of the city. But again, this idea of again, you paint yourself to be the standard and everybody else is a par. And when you have that kind of mentality, you only digress over time because the world continues to evolve. Things continue to change around you, but you've never changed as a person, or you've never changed as a collective. And you're still stuck in that same mentality, that same idea. And that's why everything that you do is dated. I think that's one of the things and one of the issues we're seeing in politics as well. But again, when they start doing this merit conversation, it's like, please sit down, right? And so what I saw with that as well, like with the Dr. Phil, right? A lot of people will play the role until they get to where they want to be, and then the real them comes out. Like, look at Chris Cuomo. They used to be on CNN, right? Chris used to be on there all down, and the police need to stop killing black folks, and this, that, and the third. And he was always cooking Trump and the Republicans and this, that, and the third. And now this man is practically a Trumper in less than a year, right? You see the real them start coming out, right? Because again, now, like, now that he has unfortunately kind of gotten the boot, he's trying to rebuild whatever he needs to rebuild. So he's willing to hop onto whatever conversation is going to get money in his pocket. But it's very interesting, which kind of leads me to Rudy Giuliani. But I'm going to pause before I get to him. Let's read some more comments here. All right. Somebody said Native American communities are not benefiting from whatever reparations they receive. Poverty, chronic diseases, lack of access to clean water, high femicide rates. I think one of the flaws that existed with the reparations that was given to Native Americans was that it was kind of like they were given a check, and the U.S. is like, y'all got it from here. Y'all got it from here. Here's your land. So we gave you all this land in these different reservations in these areas that really aren't desirable to live in. Yeah, some of y'all got a check and everything, but figure out your own electricity situation. Figure out your water. If you would like to connect to the U.S. power grid or to the water system thing, you need to pay all these different, everything else like that. And yeah, there's a lot of groups that did not get full. Like, I think reparations, to me, the purpose of reparations is not just the check. The check should come, but the reparations is to make a group whole. The U.S. never quite made Native Americans whole at all. It's not even close, right? And so when we're talking reparations for Black folks, that's what I think we should be advocating for, is in addition to the check, you have to remedy all the wrongs. It's not just specifically a check. Because one, and I think people need to do the math. And I know a lot of people were running with Marianne Williamson when she was running in 2020, because she was like, yeah, reparations, $500 billion. And I was like, that's great. But when we do the math, right, if you were to split $500 billion amongst the people who would have been able to qualify, that was only, it's something in the five figures for everybody. That's not enough to undo what has been done to Black people collectively. That would not be enough to fix what's wrong within this wealth gap that exists. That wouldn't be enough to fix the housing crisis that exists within the Black collective and the Black community. Like that, it wouldn't be enough, right? That's how big the check needs to be. But in addition to that, you also have to create programs and create law and precedent, which unfortunately precedent isn't a thing in 2024, that ensure that certain patterns can never happen again, right? That certain aspects, there's always going to be an effort to stop and block things that could possibly create a full cycle moment where Black people end up in another situation where they're not allowed to live in certain neighborhoods, or they're not allowed to go to certain schools, or they're not allowed to have certain jobs. Like, you have to make sure that there's all kind of things. So reparations to me is more than just a check. And I think for a lot of Native Americans, that's unfortunately, they didn't get all that. Now that's their fight to have. But yeah, I think there's layers with the reparations conversation. Somebody says she's not Black and everyone knows it. Neither is any president, honestly. I'm not here for semantics. I just need somebody that's not crazy to be in office and get stuff done, right? So if that's somebody who's white, somebody who's Indian, somebody who's Asian, whatever they are, if they got the right kind of policy that I like, let's go. Especially when I've grown up and seen nothing but white men be in charge of everything, minus one guy. Like, can we be for real here? Like, at some point, y'all are going to have to start figuring out what it is you really want to stand 10 toes down about. Like, I think we can have these conversations, but to me, I don't see her as somebody campaigning as Assad Shakur. Never saw her as that. So I don't know where this is coming from. Whatever. All right. Vote for who you want to vote for. Keep it moving. Either way, I'll still be here after the election. We'll still be talking. All right. Anyway, somebody said, why is no one talking about the voter suppression going on in Georgia? They are not sending out these absentee ballots. I'm just now hearing about that, but I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff. Like I said, you saw them burning the ballot boxes. There's all these different courts and cases. You see with the Georgia, the judge said y'all can't have this random committee that's going to pick and choose whether or not they want to certify the election, and now that's going to go to the next court. Like, all these states got stuff going on. Like, if folks got to cheat, that should tell you something. If folks got to do $1 million giveaways to get your vote, that should tell you something, right? And the thing that I'm concerned about is these people that like to be poll watchers. Like, I don't see the purpose of that. What are you watching? People get in line, they go, they check their boxes, and they go home. What are you watching? Why are you out there with an AR-15 watching the line? That's chaos waiting to happen, right? Man. All right. Somebody said, when did the mayor control bridges? I don't know, but somehow it was his fault, according to the anti-DEI disciples. Anyway, I want to go to Rudy Giuliani because I have been enjoying this one. I was going to do a video on it last week, but I wasn't here. Let us see here. Julie. Let's get to him. Rudy, where are you at? Let me find this article. And when I tell you that made my day. Made my day. All right, here we go. Which is funny because he was at the rally, right? Rudy Giuliani ordered to turn over New York City apartment 26 watches to Georgia election workers. Rudy Giuliani must turn over sports memorabilia and other prized possessions to 2 Georgia election workers who won $148 million defamation judgment against him, including his New York City apartment, more than 24 luxury watches, and a 1980 Mercedes once owned by movie star Lauren Bacall, a judge ruled Tuesday. But U.S. District Judge Lewis Lemon in Manhattan also said Giuliani does not have to give election workers 3 New York Yankees World Series rings or his Florida condominium for now, noting those assets are tied up in other litigation. The property Giuliani must relinquish is expected to fetch several $1 million for Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Wandrea Shea Moss. They won $148 million over Giuliani's false ballot fraud claims against them related to the 2020 presidential election. They said Giuliani pushed Donald Trump's lies about the election being stolen, which led to death threats that made them fear for their lives. Let's see. Let's keep going. Under Tuesday's order, Giuliani must turn over within 7 days. Hold on. What date is this? This is October 22nd. What's the day? 28th? You got one more day. All right. 7 days. Where's that piece I just saw? 7 days. Let me see. Under Tuesday's order, Giuliani must turn over within 7 days his Manhattan apartment, estimated at more than $5 million, as well as the interest of about $2 million that he says Trump's 2020 presidential campaign owes him for his services. Also on the list of assets that must be given to Freeman and Moss are the 1980 Mercedes-Benz SL 500 previously owned by Bacall, a shirt and picture signed respectively by Yankees legends Joe DiMaggio, Reggie Jackson, a signed Yankee Stadium picture, a diamond ring, costume jewelry, and 26 watches, including a Rolex, 5 Shinolas, 2 Belovas, I ain't even never heard of that, and Tiffany & Company. In court documents filed earlier this year, Giuliani's estimated worth of the Mercedes was about $25,000, and the watches, World Series rings, and costume jewelry was about $30,000. This is real far from $148 million. He said the value of his sports memorabilia was unknown. One of those watches was given to Giuliani by his grandfather, and he asked that he be allowed to keep it because of sentimental value. But Lemon rejected the request, saying Giuliani could have had it exempted if he had proven it was worth less than $1,000, but he did not do so. The court also does not doubt that certain of the items may be or may have sentimental value to the defendant, the judge added, but that does little to entitle the defendant to continued enjoyment of the assets to the detriment of the plaintiffs, to whom he owes approximately $150 million. It is, after all, the underlying policy of these New York statutes that no man should be permitted to live at the same time in luxury and in debt. All right. Giuliani has asked the judge to bar Freeman and Moss from selling any of his assets until after his appeal of the judgment is completed. Lyman also rejected that request, saying Giuliani could have asked the federal court in D.C., where Freeman and Moss won their case, to stay in asset sales pending his appeal, but he did not. Giuliani hasn't paid anything yet to the women who won the defamation suit against him. I'm going to stop there because that's pretty much everything. But anyway, I have enjoyed this because if you knew, like we've talked about this a few times, but the nonsense. Well, you know what's crazy? That man has literally lost everything running behind Orange Man and his foolishness, right? And what's interesting with Giuliani, like, because I was from the West Coast, I didn't live in New York, but my perception of Giuliani at the time as a child, I just saw him as, I remember seeing him in a few movies, you know, like I think he was in Eddie, that Whoopi Goldberg movie where she's the coach of the Knicks. I think he's in that. I can't remember. But other than that, I always saw him as, oh, he was that mayor that they always celebrated after 9/11 who brought New York back. That was what was presented if you weren't from New York and everything else like that, until modern times, the narrative has kind of changed, right? But it's like, you destroyed all of that running behind Orange Man. It's like, what do you have left between him and Pillow Guy? I don't know who fumbled the bag more, right? Like when I look at the Pillow Guy, it's like everybody needs a pillow, everybody, right? And the thing is, you got to replace your pillows every few months, right? How do you mess up a pillow business? Because Pillow Man is broke, right? And that's why I found it interesting that Giuliani, like you got to move out tomorrow, but you at the big rally having big fun, right? You at the rally having big fun, and you're supposed to be boxing up the stuff at the house. And so it's just interesting, and it sucks too, because look, he got to give up that property, and it's about to be winter. It's about to be cold outside. You got to give up your house. And I think when you just think about what it is that those women went through, he made them the face of what you call voter fraud, something that really wasn't even a thing in the 2020 election, something that was hardly proven. And in reality, the folks that we've seen commit the most fraud were actually the very people making the claims, when we had the fake electors and everything else like that, right? And so you painted them to be the face of voter fraud at a time when politics has become so tribal, right? Hell, even our comment section, our politics has become so tribal. Everybody's super, super locked in with whatever it is that they feel, and everybody is on edge. And you knew that. And you knew that you also had a massive platform. You knew that you carried a certain kind of element and a certain kind of weight, and you decided to make them the face of everything wrong with what you thought did not fit within America. And then on top of that, you latched onto the anti-Black talking points. There's a part where he talks about, yeah, and they had the USB, because the narrative was that they were, you know, shifting the votes and hiding votes and bringing in illegal votes and everything else like that. And it was all on this jump drive. And then he goes, and yeah, they were carrying the jump drive like it was crack, right? All the talking points, so, you know, all the coded language and coded words, right? When in reality, it's so funny. People like to paint crack addicts as Black, when in reality, 65% of crack users have always been white. Always, even in the 80s, right? Always. Crazy. But it's like he knew that. So it's like he brings in that conversation of just, you know, what happens when social media gets a hold of things, and then you bring in the conspiracy theories and everything else like that. And then here we are. You know what kind of platform you have. And so it's like you get what you get. So I'm glad that they have wiped out everything to the point where you don't have $148 million. And so your $5 million apartment is pocket change compared to what's owed. And you're down so bad, you're scraping together $30,000 worth of jewelry to try to pay stuff off. And you have nothing else coming in because you wanted to run behind some foolishness. Imagine that. And the worst part, you know, you've also been disbarred. You can't practice law anymore. And it's not like you can start over. Because at this point, the man is 80 years old. And it's not saying that he can't do anything, because we've had two candidates that are practically 80 running for office. So anything is possible. But it's like, at this stage in life, is this the time that you want to be down bad? And you said yes. So may you receive what it is that you put into the universe, right? Hot mess. And you know what? And then thinking about it too, like, even if he still could practice law, who would want him? He couldn't even get the venue right. Remember when he was supposed to be at that he thought he was doing the Sheraton Hotel, but he ended up going to the Sheraton Landscaping Company. And then instead of just canceling the event or rescheduling, he said, no, we're gonna still finish this. So now they're outside of some rock quarry in front of this old dilapidated building trying to have a press conference about how the election was a scam. Like, y'all just look crazy. Everybody in that man's circle looks cuckoo. And the funniest thing, even Trump's circle don't really run with him. Like, all the Trump's people be running together and hanging out, and then they see Giuliani. Oh, here we go. What's up? Hey, how you doing? Because, you know, Giuliani is nothing to them at this point. There's nothing, there's no leverage, there's anything they can gain from this man. But this man has literally thrown away his livelihood, running behind some foolishness. And I hope that the two of them just sell the property, because I know it's nasty. I would not move in that house, because Giuliani is a very unkept man. So good luck with that. To them, not him. All right, let's see some comments here. Somebody said Jenner is a wealthy person doing what wealthy people do. Yeah, even when Caitlyn Jenner ran, what was the main argument? They were complaining about homeless people. And it's like, you weren't talking about how you could fix the homeless problem. You just wanted to push them off the street because you were talking about how undesirable it was to see them as you were trying to get to your airplane hangar. Like, who are these people running? I'm telling you, the minute money is taken out of politics, we'd see a totally different game. This is why, what's his name? The tour that ran for governor at that time, the wrestler. That's one of the reasons why I always had a respect for how he did things with his campaign, because there wasn't a lot of money with that. And his was really strictly centered on politics. Now, he and I don't agree on everything, but I had a respect for how he moved, because to me, he represented how politics should be, where candidates should not be able to get bought out or outbought and outspent. I think, if anything, if there's going to be money put into politics, I feel like everybody should get the same pool of money to utilize. And once it's gone, it's gone. And you really have to stick to the topic, stick to the policy, stick to the points, and find ways that bring people in, as opposed to these giant super PACs and this, that, and the third. And like, why are we having $1 billion elections? That's crazy to me. Like, man. Anyway. What up, Marcel Robinson? Somebody said, Vanity's Mirror said, correct reparations is reparative justice all around. Oh yeah, I forgot about Rudy Giuliani and that hair dye all melting on the side. Listen, when I start going gray, I don't have any grays yet. I ain't got none yet. I'm kind of like on gray watch, because I'm at that age where they're supposed to start showing up. But yeah, when the grays come in, there ain't gonna be no dye sliding down my face. I'm hoping I get like the good gray, like a good, either give me like the really nice like salty pepper look, or give me like a good white streak, right? The distinguished look. I want something like that, right? So I hope I get when it comes in. Right? And please, Lord, let the hair not slide back. Do not let this hairline start moving back, please. Amen. Somebody said, did you see where Amber Rose accused Beyonce of copying her style on the Shade Room Instagram post? Amber Rose. First of all, we know her because initially she wasn't allowed to talk. She just had to walk behind Kanye and be quiet. That was her introduction to us. So from that moment on, there's not much she can do for me, because I'm looking at how you came onto the scene, and that wouldn't have been the way that I would have done it. So there's that. Somebody said, I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination, but the hatred for blacks is spiritual. We must be on the same page. Wait till I get to 3 segments from now. Remember that for later. All right. Listen, Troy, vote who you want to vote for. Go on and do it. I'm not going to stop you from voting for whoever you want to vote for. Get behind what you want to get behind and be proud about it. That's the way life works. I'm not about to argue with none of y'all on how you feel politically. Do what you want to do. I'm just sharing my opinion with how I see things. I'm not going to hold a knife to anybody's throat about their politics. So do what you do, sir. Enjoy. All right. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Preston Pfeiffer said, I'm voting for Kamala, but if she texts me one more time asking for a donation when a piece of salmon is $17, listen, I got her blocked. I was like, you send me one more text. I was sleeping. Ding! Hey, Kamala here. Ma'am, leave me alone. First of all, I don't donate to nobody's campaign, because I told you, this money in politics ain't gonna add up to me. I think that's nope. Now, like, no. Actually, I'm lying. I had before, but Kamala would be fine. But no. Stop texting me, please. Leave me alone. Man, somebody said I gotta do. We're not gonna say I gotta do my research. I think I'm one of the most researched people out here. All right. Anyway, let's see. And I think also y'all keep acting like we don't got a Supreme Court to think about. Now, understand, we have at least 2 justices that are about a foot out the door, right? Now, Orange may get back in there. He's definitely going to put in 2 justices that are probably 40, 50 years old, that will be there for the next 30, 40 years, making decisions about our lives. Like, I think, again, our politics is so much greater than just what's going to happen in the 4 years of whoever's doing what, right? Like, there's so many things to look at and to consider. That's why, I'm not a one-issue voter. I just can't be. There's too many things on the table. And again, coming from working in the nonprofit world and seeing firsthand a lot of the nonsense that the working class has to deal with, there's some things I'm not about to just sit back on and allow to keep happening, all in the name because I want to be right about something, or like, because sometimes to me it gets to a point where, are you standing 10 toes down about whatever you're standing 10 toes down about because you want to be right, or because you actually want to see justice and you want things to go well for folks? Like, that kind of becomes a question, because I think we're getting to a space where there's some folks who at this point, doesn't matter what happens, they just want to be in the I was right bubble, or be one of the I told you so disciples, or be like some of the people who don't have an opinion on anything but show up to critique all day afterwards. Like, we're just in an interesting space. I think politics, again, is not a one-trick pony, one-size-fits-all approach. So like I said, y'all do whatever is in your heart to do, and we will live with the consequences of whoever's in there. It's just life, right? I think I said when Biden got in, when he was elected, I said, don't look at this man as being some revolutionary anything. He's going to be a business as usual president, and that's exactly what he was. Business as usual. The country ran. Everything wasn't perfect. Everything wasn't great. Things were so-so. He came in and did his business as usual thing, like every other president before him, right? And just understand, you're not getting any revolutionary change in a 4-year cycle with any candidate, especially when Congress is still compromised and the Supreme Court is still compromised, and then the state houses are still compromised. Like, in order to get all this revolution that everybody's that they want, then understand this is kind of like a 5-6 election cycle process. You have to be willing to understand that maybe it might not necessarily happen in your lifetime, but if you put in the work now, you can make sure that your children are going to be good. And I think we have so many people who are not in that space. It's like I want it now. Like the girl off the what is it? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want it now. That's kind of where we're at now. And I get it. Because unfortunately, a lot of the effects and end results of really terrible policy over the last 40 years somehow has all hit our doorstep in the last 5-6 years, and we're feeling the brunt of it from so many administrations. And I think people are tired, right? People are over it. And that's why even with those who are running, this is, to me, is an election where you have people who aren't really excited at all. And I honestly do think that's a good thing. I don't think we should be excited for candidates. I think we should be kind of cautious with who we put in. And yeah, you give them your vote, but then it's like you're glued to watch. But anyway, let's keep it moving. Let's see. Somebody say, yes, Joyous. Do you not understand someone will be president? Clearly, whether y'all vote or don't vote or do. Exactly. So somebody gonna be in there after January, right? Somebody said, do you have an opinion on people who are withholding voting due to Gaza and Israel? See, with that one, like that one too is a very nuanced conversation, because I don't agree with Joe and Kamala at all with what's been happening with Israel and Gaza at all. If that's one thing that has just turned me all the way off, that there. But then at the same time, the other person who has, and when I speak on this, I'm speaking specifically of the two, what I call the headliners of this election. We know there are other candidates. Joe Stein is in there. There's other people. But when we're talking about the two that we know that who it's really going to be between, like, Kamala and crew are calling for the ceasefire. Cool. I think they could call for more. Like, maybe we just stop funding Israel, stop giving them weapons. Israel want to keep shaking the table, let them do it by themselves and stop using our tax dollars to do it. But at the same time, with Orange Man, he already said he wants Netanyahu to finish the job. Right? What do you think is going to, I feel like they will be even worse off with Orange Man in there, because he doesn't care. Well, I mean, he don't even care about the people here. So, like, I think things will be even worse with him in charge, because he's not really somebody who's really paid attention to foreign policy anyway. He swears to God that he has. Now, I'll give him this. I'll say, at least while he was in office, I wasn't worried about North Korea, because him and Kim Jong-un somehow was somewhat cordial, even though he kept calling him Rocket Man. I was like, please, no name calling, because Kim Jong a little crazy. I don't want to see the white flash, and I live in the nation's capital. Something go down, I live in a region that's probably going to be one of the first ones hit. So please stop with the name calling. But anyway, yeah, as far as Gaza and all, he doesn't even see them as people. He already talked about defunding schools that would have any kind of pro-Gaza anything, right? He talked about arresting and deporting people who are anti-U.S. military and support Palestine. So he does not care about the people of Gaza. So unfortunately, like I said, because the U.S. is in a bunch of stupid treaties, we're on the bad side of history with Gaza, unfortunately. And I would hope that whoever gets in there stops killing all those civilians and does whatever they need to do to get that crap to end. Because I don't understand for the life of me how you can sleep at night. And that's just global affairs in general, right? When you just talk about what's happening in all these different countries with different groups that are being literally, victims of genocide, whether we're talking to Congo or what had been happening in Ethiopia or Sudan, like all these different places, like that's the sad aspect of when the wrong people get in power. I already told y'all before, Netanyahu was cuckoo. After he lost that election in '96, he's kind of like, to me, he's another version of Trump. He had a vendetta to get back in there and shake things up, and that's what he's been doing. Because honestly, this is why, gosh, when Yasser Arafat was still alive, times were so different, right? Like Israel and Gaza and West Bank still had their issues, but it was a different approach because there was an effort to try to keep some element of peace. The problems were still there, but now it's just like, forget it. Everybody just do what you want. Right? It crazy to me. All right. All right. Let's see. Somebody said Bill Gates just gave her campaign $50 million. Well, look, Elon just gave $75 million on the other side. See, get these rich people out the elections. Man. Somebody said, let's see. What up, Avocado Queen? Look, Avocado Queen, you're the main person I was thinking about because I said I have not done you remember we were having just the Zoom parties? I was like, you came to my mind for some reason. I was like, we need another Zoom party. So thank you for popping up because I've meant to schedule one. We're gonna have a Zoom party before the end of this year. All right. Kira said Biden could have expanded the court but refused. Can I tell you what my beef with Biden was? My thing with Biden, I always saw Biden as somebody who would kind of do any and everything to get in the door by like pleasing everybody. And I think his approach for his term was he really was trying to run on the idea of he could unite everybody. And so I felt like he was never going to do anything that was too far to the left in order to make sure that the people that are far on the right wouldn't be pissed off. And so there's lots of things he caved on. And my thing is like, at this point, if he was going to drop out anyway, you should have went ahead and shook the table and bounced. Like, man, like if I were Biden, first of all, I wasn't going to be running in my 70s. But if I had been Biden and got in, now, to be fair, Cinema and freaking guy from West Virginia were in the way ruining everything, messing up all the progress. But, had I had a cooperating Congress and I was Biden, I would have shook that damn table so much. There would have been so much stuff that would have been pushed through. And then I would have been like, all right, that's it. I'll see y'all later. Good luck. And pushed in for whoever would have came after me. I wouldn't have run for 2 terms. But whatever. All right. Okay, guys, we got to move on, y'all. Listen, let Troy feel however Troy would like to feel. Like, right? Like, here's the thing. Like I said, I get it. Everybody's gonna have their difference of how they see things. Even if I don't agree and I'm looking at you half crazy. Listen, clearly, everybody has their own prerogative to do whatever they want to do, right? And like I said, we all just live in the end result of what the collective of society chooses to do. All right. Let's see. And guys, can y'all please think locally? Like, I think a lot of the problems we're having right now, we can see a lot of this stuff shift if we really put energy into the local elections. Louisiana, locally, please, locally. Every state, honestly, locally. There's so much. If you can start local and get a lot more candidates that are not as cuckoo in there, at that local level, there's some things that we can start to slowly undo that have been messed up. There's just so many of the wrong people in these local positions, and those local ones are the ones that affect you quicker. Like, those are the things that automatically you feel the burn right away, right? Like, please pay, like, when you vote, they, depending on where you live, like I know in DC, they give us this big old beautiful book of everybody who's running and what all the things are. Read it, right? Look at what's in it. Don't just be checking the box because they got a cool name or they got whatever letter you stand behind next to it. Like, read what the different things are and go from there. And then if something don't make sense, then I would also go and do additional research before you even go to vote, right? But I mean, for me, I was doing absentee. Like, I always just have to mail it because I don't stand in line no more. After I stood in line for 3 hours in 2016, never again. All right. Okay, we got to move on, guys. Okay, so I'm going to do about 2 or 3 heavy ones. We'll keep it going. Let me go to Donnie Swaggart. Right now, one of the things that I've been saying, right, is, and this goes back to somebody's point they made earlier about the whole thing about spiritual everything, right? So there was Donnie Swaggart, who was like a pastor. You might know who his father was, right? This is one of these big giant pastors, white evangelical leader who has a huge congregation, but he has a huge beef with the black church at the moment. So he had this whole sermon about it and talking about like he was mad because one of the larger black pastors out of the Kojic denomination, I think, endorsed Kamala. So he got mad. And he was saying like, how does the black church, you know, claim to be Christian, but you stand behind a candidate that supports gay marriage, or you stand behind a candidate that supports women's, well, they didn't say women's reproductive rights, you know, killing the babies. That's pretty much what they said, right? And then the part that got me out of that was he said if 1860 was today, they wouldn't say a word about preachers preaching against slavery. And then started going about just how the black church should be aligned. I think first of all, can we have a really deep conversation really quick? First of all, this is the beef I've always had with white evangelicals. I've always said this before. Their God is whiteness. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with the well-being of anything and everybody. Whiteness is their God. Because again, when you look at how white evangelicals collectively move on everything, they're silent about everything else except, you know, those two things that he mentioned. But it's kind of like, I think back to 2020, right? Remember Paula White with the African angels that were coming? Because she was praying so hard because they wanted Trump to win. So the African angels magically were coming. Some angels we ain't never heard of. And she started naming folks and whatever else they were doing. But again, it's like, when I look at everything else, they tend to stay silent on things that are oppressive to marginalized groups of people. When all that police brutality was going on and black folks were getting killed and shot, a lot of them were silent when it came to the anti-police brutality protests, right? They were silent in the 50s and 60s and 70s doing redlining, had nothing to say, nothing against it at all, enjoyed it, right? These are the benefits of being a good Christian. We deserve these things. Those people must have done something wrong, right? Like that was kind of the narrative that was out there. They were dead silent, right? Even when it comes to war, a lot of them are dead silent. A lot of them, and you know, there's a conversation of pro-troops versus pro-military industrial complex. Now, when I say the term pro-troops, what I mean is I hope everybody goes out there and makes it home, and God willing, nobody has to kill anybody. Hopefully, by the time the flight lands, the two higher government officials have already signed some treaty and said, actually, we ain't got to go to war. Everybody come back home. So the troops of whatever country across the water, they all go home safely and they're good. The troops of the U.S. all get to come home safe. And I've always had that opinion because I told y'all before, my best friend from high school at the time, you know, I had to live through the experience of watching his brother get killed in Iraq, right? We literally were rehearsing for the talent show in his garage. We were here working. I still remember the dance routine. We were dancing to Usher's Caught Up and Sierra's 1-2 Step. We put it in a little mix and we were working on those two little dances in his garage. It was like me, him, and like 3 other people. And literally as we were leaving to go, and I think go to get McDonald's, we didn't notice it, but the car, you know how they always have the military come to your house to bring the flag. The car was pulling up as we were pulling out, and we went and got all this food and everything. I got home, and then this friend always used to pick me up for school because I didn't have I had my car, but I couldn't drive it at the time. And so I had an attitude that morning because I had already been late. Like he always had me getting late to school because we never left on time. We'd always leave late and stop at McDonald's and stuff, and Burger King. And so I already had this teacher, Mr. Atkins, that was like, if you're late one more time, I'm going to write you up. So, okay. So that specific morning, he was late and I had already missed the real bus to get to school. I'm like, where's this Negro at? And I kept calling and no answer, right? Then I get to school finally. I don't remember how I got to school. I think I had to ask my dad or somebody, but I know I got cussed out on the way, right? And then one of my friends, this girl, Amber, was like, oh, well, you heard what happened to so-and-so, right? And I was like, what? Like, you know, his brother died yesterday. I was like, what? Right? And so, horrible. But the idea of having to experience that and then go to his house later that day. And, you know, I brought my parents and they brought like flowers and stuff. And to see his mom, because this is how deep it was. Like he and I were best friends at the time. And then his older brother used to be best friends with my babysitter when I was little. Like there was a family. My parents always had foster kids. Like when I was coming up, they were always taking in folks, teenagers that were having a hard time or parents got stationed somewhere, they'd be watching. So like for like a year and a half, there was this kid, he was a 6th grader and another one who was an 8th grader that lived with us. This is like 94, 95, right? But they had lived with us. But I said all that to say, so my best friend at the time, his brother was best friends with the guy that was in 6th grade, right? So they were best friends. So I've always kind of known these people forever and a day. Fast forward, now we're in high school. It's like my junior year of high school, right? So to go to the house and then have his mother like bawl, I mean, hold me by the bottom of my legs and screaming and keep saying, I'm so used to seeing all y'all together. He's supposed to be there too, because she's now remembering that when we were young, sometimes the one that was in 6th grade and then the brother sometimes would kind of be hanging out, and then me and the best friend when we were really little would kind of all be around. Like she's crying about that. Like once you kind of have that kind of image in your head to see a mother who's lost her child in an unjust war that didn't need to take place in the first place, right? there's certain ways you never look at war the same again. And it's not to say that I didn't care about war until it was at my doorstep, because I've never really been a fan of the idea of war. I just think it's stupid. Like, the beefs are with the world leaders, not the people affected by it. Why? Like, North Korea, can't none of y'all name one person over there, but there's folks who be like, that's our biggest enemy. You don't know none of them folks over there. In the same way that they don't know you, right? The same thing where they do this thing with the people of China. You might know somebody in China. You might, I don't know. But like, all of these people that we keep trying to paint to be enemies and all this other stuff are like, this is all an end result of just policy and governments, not the actual people affected by it. And you notice, I always say the one thing that always brings everybody together is music, right? Which is why I'm always like, this is why I need music to continue to do what it does and connect people, because that's where you can kind of see people's differences disappear. Even in US politics, even people who have the worst of the worst opposing views, let them be in the same concert. They'll be in there having the time of their life, right? Anyway, but I say all that to say, going back to white evangelicals, they're silent on things that matter. They're silent on things that affect everybody except for them. And the only time they seem to come together is, one, somehow the conversation of reproductive rights or same-sex marriage. And then other than that, they're silent. And then when they vote, they tend to vote for right-wing, usually anti-black politicians and everything that's anti-black. They vote against policy, right? They vote against, and they celebrate different things. So a lot of them celebrated the gutting of affirmative action. So it's a great thing. Wonderful. Excellent. Right? And so, during the civil rights era, a lot of them were silent. And a lot of them were using religion as a reason to justify why blacks should be on the other side of town, right? And even when you're just talking about the introduction of how blacks were brought into Christianity in the United States, black people got the punitive version of Christianity. We didn't even get the same Bible. We got the version of the Bible that had been gypped and skimmed out. And I'm gonna stop saying that term because y'all told me that one's offensive. Just kind of been chopped and screwed in all these different segments out here. That way, folks would not try to rebel. They would kind of use this as a way to keep people subordinate, right? And so it's like y'all been silent on all that. And then you got the nerve somehow to get mad because people in the black church probably don't want to align with the racist guy because they've already seen what he did in the last 4 years. So what are you talking about? And the idea that of all groups to target, you target the black church. And this is why I say, like with religion, understand that whiteness is so strong that pretty much it can overpower spirituality in the US, right? So like whiteness, again, is so strong in the US that it overpowers spirituality. So people will bypass their morals or whatever they stand on, all in the name of whiteness. And yeah, they'll do the women's reproductive nugget and the same-sex marriage nugget and be silent with everything else, right? And even with women's reproductive rights and same-sex marriage, it's just how you see the world. I don't see a problem with either of them. Let people do whatever they're going to do. It is. I'm in a space where I'm not trying to impede on anybody's life. I want everybody to just be great, enjoy, do whatever they do, live their life, be happy, right? Somebody being married does not piss me off, like, right? That's just where I'm at. But it's interesting. So they do all this religious stuff, but they're silent about adultery, which their candidate clearly stepped out on the wife while she was pregnant with a whole porn star. I ain't got nothing to say about that. Met one wife while cheating on the other wife, right? And then, dang, the other wife didn't even get a gravestone at the golf course. They just buried, I don't know what was buried in that casket. Probably some evidence from one of them cases. But it's just like, cut the crap. So yeah, white evangelicals, it's like, y'all can sit here and pretend to all of a sudden have a holy morale about everything, but we've seen how y'all move all the time, right? We saw how y'all donated to George Zimmerman after he killed Trayvon Martin. We saw you stand behind the killer of Jordan Davis. We see how you move every single time a black person is unjustifiably killed. Right? We see how you move every single time. We see how you're silent, right? As you see the violence that takes place against marginalized groups of people, right? We see how there's silence with even what's happening where there's cities that are criminalizing the idea of being homeless, right? Putting spikes on the park benches, having even in DC, the bulldozers that went and snatched up all the tents. I didn't see none of y'all out there protesting and fighting against that. Dead silent. Nothing to say. So cut the crap about all of a sudden pretending that you know the Lord. The Lord that you know is totally different from, I think, what the black churches has a relationship with. So I don't know if heaven's going to be segregated or what, but yeah, some of y'all are full of it, right? Anyway, and then half of them, especially when it comes again to the conversation of abortion, don't be fooled. A lot of these evangelical preachers have paid off so many side women pieces and everything to go to the clinic and get stuff taken care of because they don't want to lose everything. Like, get out of here. Silent about Palestine as well. Thank you, Tyler. Like crazy. Like, and as somebody who grew up in the church, you just see the foolishness. Like, cut the crap, right? Okay. Anyway, let's go back up here. Somebody says Netanyahu uses straight out hate or flat out hate speech when talking about Palestinians. Like I said, he does not need to be in power for anything else. And I feel like there's a lot of people in Israel who also are against him. I want to also say that as well. But unfortunately, the way things are set up, yeah. Jasmine Jones said, when Trump was in office the first time, drone strikes increased by 250,000 jobs were outsourced. A ton of deregulation, which we're now seeing impacts on, were all these food recalls. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cinema and mansion ruined what could have been a super excellent term. I feel like Joe still had a pretty decent term, but especially in regard to like bringing the economy back to an extent. There's certain things that are not perfect, but things are getting back to a space where that period of uncertainty isn't really there anymore, right? But mansion and cinema, no, when you say in the way, so many things that could have been done. And again, also with things changing in the world, that's why I say with our politics, start looking at a bigger picture globally. Like I do think that, like I said, within the next 10 years, the US will not have the largest GDP. And also with the petrodollar kind of being phased out because all these different countries are starting to get behind BRIC, right? Which is pretty much how commerce is affected in regard to like the sale of oil and stuff. Like because the petrodollar is not worth anything and BRIC is backed by something, understand life is about to change for a lot of folks, depending on how the world moves. And so that's why, like with politics, you have to look at like what's happening locally, what's happening at the state level, what's happening nationally, and then how even our foreign policy and international affairs, how everything is connected, right? Everything. That's why I thought it was so weird when COVID first hit and everybody was trying to act like it wasn't a real thing. And it was just the US trying to find ways to keep the people like sheep. And I'm like, COVID is global. It's everywhere. It's not just here. It's not just here. like, okay. Sometimes you got to look beyond your backyard, right? Somebody said Trumpers are voting red down ballot. That's exactly what they did in 2020, and I think that was, and I said that before, like because that was also kind of the plan that a lot of folks had here, or a lot of Black folks were saying, okay, they weren't crazy over the two choices, but they'll vote down ballot, and it's like the other side did the exact same thing. So I think that's why with 2020. A lot of those House and Senate elections didn't go as well because Republicans they were sick of Trump, but they were still going to vote for Graham and Ted Cruz and Jim Jordan and all of them, Marjorie Taylor Greene. All of them was still getting in office, right? Let me see. Oh, this mic is behind me. Maybe I need to move it. Y'all probably are hearing like an echo here. Maybe my sound will be better. I'm over here rocking and twisting, so my bad. All right. Let's see. Yes, crickets. Exactly. Poverty, crickets. Lack of health care, yes, crickets. What? Somebody said, why is progress so bad? Or I guess they mean the idea of like progressive policy. I don't see it as anything bad, but I think generationally, older generations are disconnected from it because they don't see policy that same way. So to me, it's a generational thing where as far as progressive policy, it tends to be a bit more popular with Gen Z, millennials, some of Gen X. But when you talk about the latter half of Gen X, baby boomers and the silent generation, they're not as apt to it, right? They feel that it's too much spending because a lot of progressive policies is centered around the idea of like really big spending bills that would actually, they in the long run, it makes things a lot better, like investment in this, investment in that, the conversation around climate change, all these different things. But for others, they're like, no, that's not our thing. We don't want to do that, right? So it's, to me, I see it as a generational divide, even within the parties. I agree. Politics and religion shouldn't mix anyway. I don't think churches should endorse candidates either, to be honest. I feel like keep the things separate. We got to keep it moving. Got to keep it moving. Oh, that was a good one, KO. Silent about abuse, right? Half of the men in there be knocking their wives upside the head all the time, and they are dead silent. And I'm talking about in the church, right? beating the mess out of their wives, and some of the women to the husband, but silent on that, silent on adultery, silent on everything else that allegedly is a sin in the Bible or is a sin in the Bible. But then there's the things they want to stand 10 toes down on. Okay, right, a mess. Okay, Lil Durk. All right, let me just read a few of the details here. Here we go. Lil Durk. And I'm so annoyed. I just heard a song that he was on that I actually liked. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was him. I want to say it's one of those songs on the Caution album. I was like, that's nice. That's nice. Now you got caught up in something, right? All right, so Lil Durk. I hope I'm saying the name right. Y'all know I don't be keeping up with the new acts like that. All right, so all right, so let's see here. Real name is Durk Devontae Banks, was arrested in Florida on October 24th on charges related to a murder for hire scheme. Federal prosecutors allege he was involved in orchestrating the 2022 killing of Lil Pab Robinson, the cousin of rapper Quando Rondo. The alleged plot is believed to be connected to the 2020 death of rapper King Von, Durk's close associate. Alongside Lil Durk, 5 members of his Only the Family Collective, or OTF, were also implicated in the case. Federal investigators obtained iCloud records of Lil Durk advising an associate in his alleged murder plot. Federal investigators obtained access to Lil Durk's iCloud account through the legal process as Apple complies with valid search warrants or subpoenas that mandate such access. Lil Durk advises an associate in his alleged murder plot, don't book no flights under no names involved with me, Lil Durk. Despite this warning, the associate booked the flight using a credit card linked to Lil Durk and OTF. If convicted, Lil Durk could face substantial prison time, potentially decades, given the severity of the charges like murder for hire and conspiracy. Such federal charges typically come with mandatory minimums and are prosecuted aggressively, especially if premeditated actions are involved. The exact sentence would depend on the case's evidence, his legal defense, and any potential plea bargains or reduced charges. That's shout out to the movie scenes for some of that information because that's where I got it from. I'm going to say what I've always said in relation to entertainers. Like, well, one, it sucks too, because like I saw, he'd been doing all this community work and stuff in the last few years. But the thing is here, like that I would say is like, what annoys me with a lot of people that get into spaces where they literally get paid to do exactly what they love is that sometimes they're still tied to nonsense, right? And they're tied to things that weigh them down, right? Like one thing about growth is that you can't run in every circle. As you evolve, as you get older, as things come together in your life, there's some things, unfortunately, you have to cut ties with, right? Sometimes your day ones end up being the ones that will weigh you down, unfortunately, if you guys are not equally yoked with how you move anymore, right? And understand that like poor choices cannot outweigh sometimes the good that you do later in life. And so it's like, here you have this guy who's talented, who has all this great things he could be doing, and you just ruined your life being tied to some nonsense. If this is all true, right? Murder for hire, like how, right? Let me just say this, like, y'all know I do like a million side hobbies. Some is film, some is comedy. Sometimes I might still do choreography. Right now it's music. But like, understand, if the opportunity came for me to make music for other artists, because that's really the one thing I want to do. I told y'all the main 3 people I would like to collaborate with: Warren Treaty, Duckworth, and Amber Mark. Those are the 3 that I would love to make some music for. Like if the opportunity came for me to get some placements with their work and I make all this money, you think I'm gonna still be out in these streets knifing and fighting? Like, I'm not doing that now, but I'm just saying, like, there's an element of like, in order to elevate and get to where you want to be, you're gonna have to sometimes make choices that make sense. How are you out here tied to some nonsense where y'all are killing folks over ego and beefing some dumb stuff? Now, I'll be honest, I don't follow these folks like that, so there's probably details I'm missing, so I don't want to say a whole lot about the logistics of whatever happened. But the same thing that I said with Young Thug with his situation and Tekashi 6ix9ine and all them. Now, I will say with the Young Thug case, that case is a disaster over there. I think they bit off more than they could chew because it's just too many witnesses, too many people on the docket. It's a lot with that case. But again, these folks who get all the opportunity in the world and squander it on some dumb stuff, that's the part that kills me, right? I just think like, folks, you have to evolve, man. Like, and this is why I really believe in the idea of like collective community thought with how I move, with how I move, right? There's a lot of things I'm not going to sign on for if I feel like it's going to be something that's detrimental to my collective, or if it's going to be something that's detrimental to people who come after me. I ain't signing on to it, right? And so it's just like, you literally were working with A-list celebrities and you're in all these spaces and you could have created the life that you wanted for yourself and your family. Here you are tied to some nonsense. And then even with the whole escape route, like I think the 3 countries he had plane tickets to, they didn't even have that together. Like I think he had a flight possibly to Italy and like 2 other places, but all the places still had extradition agreements with the U.S. You would have still been extradited back to the U.S. if they caught you. Like, you don't watch American Greed? Like, Lord, I read that, I was so confused. It's like, what is happening here? I swear, folks will squander things, and I get it. I think sometimes, depending on where you come from and how you move, it's hard to kind of break certain chains, right? I think that's why you have generational traumas. I think that's why there's things that follow. But man, this is why even the people who are around you, you got to have people around you that have your best interest in mind. Like, I appreciate each and every one of my close friends because they're not going to let me get into no nonsense ever. Even in moments where I might come outside of my character and be ready to want to square up with somebody, they're not letting me go into that space. Because, like, no, you got this going, you got that going, you got this going. They just know, right? There's certain things, and it's the same for me to them, which I appreciate. So there's that element of like accountability, making sure that I'm about my ish, right? So like, that's all I got. Like, do better, folks. Let me see what we got to say here. Somebody said, oh, we're still talking about the other stuff. Okay, let's see. Calvin, I love your hair. How do you achieve this style? Well, right now it ain't done. I just woke up. My hair is already naturally curly, but it's like it needs to get. I need to do a detangle. It's a little knotted up, but I don't know. I just grew it out. Actually, no. I'll show you exactly what I use, and it's one of our subscribers. Give me 1 sec. I'll go grab what I use. All right. Oh, I was close by, so I didn't have to take all day. All right, I actually got to order another set because I'm almost out of it. So I was on the Shea Moisture team, but I've eventually graduated to Fine and Branches, right? Now, Black owned, Black tested, Black approved, right? Moisturizing, nourishing, softening, hydrating, smoothing, conditioning, curl defining, smoothing, or soothing natural. But anyway, and then the reason why I got it, right? I can't even pronounce half this stuff. No phenexethol, something that ain't supposed to be that we ain't supposed to be touching, right? No soybean oil, no petroleum, or no petrolatum, no phthalate, no parabens, no mineral oil, no formaldehydes, no silicones, no isothiazone, whatever that is, and no artificial colors and no porcine, whatever all this stuff. I don't even know what half this stuff is. But anyway, it has like 3 things to it. Now, it has the, let's see which one that one. So it has the, which one is first? Oh, okay. So there's the deep conditioning treatment, right? See that? Bam, bam, bam. So you do that, let it sit in there for however long, rinse it out. After you've washed and detangled and everything, this is this is my favorite thing. I actually use too much of this. I'd be skipping the other 2 sometimes. Now, this is the restorative nutrient serum. Now, as you can see, I haven't used almost all of it. I got to order some more, but this is the restorative nutrient serum. So a lot of times when you like shampoo your hair and everything, it strips everything off of it. So you got to kind of re-nourish it. That's what this does, right? And then third step is the long-lasting signature moisturizer, right? And you put that in. That's what I normally will use. I kind of, most of the time, I either do kind of like the wash and go look, or I'll, if I don't do that, I literally just get like a spray bottle with water with a few little oils and stuff, and just and go on out the door. And then maybe every 2 weeks I'll go and get a taper. It's time for a new one because so that's what I use. But yeah, it's a really great product. They actually are one of our subscribers, and it's a really good product. So I suggest you check it out. Right? It's worked wonders. Now, like I said, my hair ain't done today. Like it ain't done. This is not done. It's a little dry. There's nothing going on here, right? But so this might not have been the best day to endorse the product. But yeah, check them out, Vine and Branches. I think their website is vineandbranches.com. Like I said, Black owned, Black tested. Let me see. Poison Ivy, what up, Poison Ivy? I said, Wallow tried to talk to Durk months before the incident. He should have listened to the OG instead of people telling him to slide for Vaughn. See, this is a life I'm not a part of, right? I just don't get squandering. Like, I would love to just get paid to just do films and music and not have to pay making the films, right? Boy, I guess. I don't have any beef with anybody that runs that deep. Not even to like throw hands with folks. Like, I got some folks I don't really care for, but if I saw them on the street, I don't even care enough. I got folks that owe me money. I'm not even pressed about it because money is always coming anyway. I've been blessed to be well off. So it's like, you know what? Good luck. It's not even that deep for me. But everybody, I guess, has their own way of doing things. Somebody said a Calvin and Duckworth project would be gold. He just needs to respond to my messages and we'll be good. Right? And I think I told you at the time I ran into him at the park bench, but it was so random. And at the time, I wasn't even, this was like 2 or 3 years ago. I just ran into him on the park bench. He was like, he did a show here that was sold out and I didn't get a ticket because they were already sold out. And when I was going to the bank, he was just on a park bench, like right outside my building. I was like, Duckworth? And I talked to him for like 10 seconds, but I think I might have freaked him out a little bit because I did kind of just walk up on him. But yeah. Anyway, I'm going to put it in the universe. We'll get a song at some point. Somebody said, I just saw a great comment. Where did it go? I don't like that sometimes this thing will like jump and you miss the person's comment. But somebody was saying something that, okay. So many black folks here have suffered because of him and his crew. So are we supposed to support that? That's anti-community. No, look, once you get into the idea of, and good, that's a point too. My thing is, I'm with you until you go against the collective. I'm with you until you do things that are detrimental to the collective. Then I gotta look at you sideways. This is why when they be trying to talk about, you need to talk about free and so and this, that, and the third, and then I go and look and see what it is that they did, and there's evidence that they did it. No, I'm not rallying the troops for that. And then a lot of times, these folks that y'all want to, not y'all, but folks want to get behind and all of a sudden turn into martyrs and turn them into Fred Hamptons and Malcolm X's. They've never done anything for the collective. A lot of times they say a lot of anti-black stuff or tell us to get the hell on. That's why even with Young Thug, I just keep thinking back to the Mike Brown situation when he was on that red carpet and they asked him about everything. And he was like, oh, well, let them handle that. We out here iced out. Right. And then that black woman he gave hell to at the airport. Right. And now here we are. And it's like, see, and then y'all want us to rally. But when the times were there when you were needed or your voice was, people asked for your voice, it was about your ice. And now I'm supposed to sit here on the soapbox and talk about how the system is disproportionately affecting us and you out here doing foolishness. Anyway, yeah, listen, I'm not rallying for everybody. Not everybody's for the collective. A lot of people are for themselves. Somebody said no grease. Yeah, I don't do grease because I like, thank God my skin has cleared, but I used to use remember Blue Magic back in the 90s? I used to use that when I still had waves. And this forehead used to be so broke out because then you put on the do-rag and be going to sleep. And I already have kind of like an oily T-zone or a combination. Man, that combination of oil and then the grease slowly sliding down, especially if I was staying at my grandma's house and the AC wasn't on and you wake up in a cold sweat, a mess. Whole face be broke out. So yeah, no grease. Somebody said, come on, brand ambassador. Oh, no, actually, no, this is just honestly what I use. I promise you, they're not paying me for this, even though, yeah, I just really enjoy the product. But yeah, they reached out and they were very patient. Because I did a video years ago talking about their product, but they were very patient because, I get a lot of emails and I can't always get to everything. But I said I would definitely shout them out on one of the videos years ago. And then when and they sent me a sample set of the product and I was like, okay, this is cool. And it was actually really good. So I was like, I went ahead and ordered the real thing too. So yeah, it's great product. And they have other products too. Those are just 3 that I use. All right. Thank you, Queen. Queen put the link in there. Okay, I gotta. What else do I gotta talk about? All right. This one here too. David Moturi, I think is the name. I want to read this article real quick, and then we're going to go from there. A mess. All right. Man who made violent threats skirted arrest and then shot a neighbor. We felt this victim 100%, the Minneapolis police chief said after criticism that the shooter, who had active arrest warrants, was not taken into custody sooner. A man in Minneapolis hit a neighbor with, there's a video of this, but I didn't want to put it all out. A man in Minneapolis hit a neighbor with a stick and threatened others with a knife and a gun, according to court records. And those warrants were issued. And though warrants were issued, the police never arrested him. Then he shot a neighbor. The Minneapolis Police Department, which was criticized for not moving more swiftly to arrest the man, took him into custody on Monday. The man, John Herbert Sawchak, 54, surrendered to police around 1:20 a.m. after an hours-long standoff. Mr. Sawchak was accused of shooting his neighbor. The neighbor's black, by the way, and the man that's doing the shooting is white. Davis Moturi in the neck on October 23rd. Prosecutors the next day charged Mr. Sawchak with attempted murder, felony assault, and felony harassment. But in the days between the shooting and his arrest, some city council members criticized the police for not immediately taking Mr. Sawchak into custody. The police repeatedly said they were unable to act quickly because of the suspect's history of mental illness and the likelihood that the situation could escalate and require the use of deadly force. According to court records, Mr. Sawchak had at least 3 active arrest warrants before the shooting. One of them involved threats of violence against Mr. Moturi, who survived the shooting. Mr. Moturi was hospitalized for injuries that included a fractured spine, 2 broken ribs, and a concussion. The news station KARE 11 reported he could not immediately be reached for comment on Monday. At a news conference on Sunday, the night before the arrest, the police chief Brian O'Hara apologized to Mr. Moturi. In this particular instance, we felt this victim 100% because that should have not happened to him. He also defended his department and said the over-criticism was a product of politicization of the police department, which he said had become smaller since 2020, the year that George Floyd, a black man, was killed by Minneapolis police. A Justice Department investigation in the aftermath of the murder accused the department of rampant discrimination and systemic mismanagement. Chief O'Hara added, the other thing that is incredibly frustrating is we cannot as a community on one hand say we want cops to use less force, we want less SWAT teams, we want more de-escalation, and when we do, then say how come cops don't use the SWAT team right away? All right, I'm going to stop right there because that's pretty much the article. But let me tell you where there's some nonsense in this. What they're not about to do is sit here and try to twist words, because now they're trying to say the idea of, well, you guys keep saying that the police use too much force, this, that, and the third. The man has already shot somebody in the neck. The man already had 3 arrest warrants, and y'all didn't go out and even arrest him because you're claiming that you're afraid that you wouldn't be able to manage or handle that. At this point, because he shot somebody in the neck, he is armed and dangerous, meaning that he may possibly do it to somebody else. And you're going to use a justification that, oh, we just, because of all everything happening with what people think about police, we don't want to jump into this too fast. Really? I'm going to tell you this right now. If me as a black man living in Minneapolis would have shot a white man in the neck, there's no, and there was a fear that I might have mental illness, I guarantee you they're not going to let me just sit in the house for a week and chill and continue doing what I do. They would, and there's 3 other warrants I got, please. So cut the crap, silly some nonsense. And they do that. They love to twist words in order to justify the nonsense, right? Twisting words is exactly why we saw what happened with Fearless Fund, which let me jump into that too really quick. Now, Fearless Fund, we've been covering this forever and a day. I didn't get to talk about it, I don't think, all the way through. But anyway, a venture capital grant program for Black women officially ends after court ruling. The Fearless Fund, an Atlanta-based venture capital fund, announced it will permanently close its grant program for Black business women owners after a year-long battle over racial discrimination. In a Wednesday court filing, attorneys representing conservative activist Edward Bloom, who we've done a video on as well, and the Atlanta-based venture fund wrote that both parties have settled, asking the court to permanently dismiss the case. Both parties said the Fearless Fund agreed to permanently close its Fearless Drivers Grant contest, which awards $20,000 to a small business led by at least one woman of color and other requirements. As of today, the Fearless Fund has permanently closed the grant contest and will never reopen it. The American Alliance for Equal Rights, which is some bullshit, a conservative group founded by Bloom, told NPR in a statement on Wednesday. The American Alliance for Equal Rights encouraged the Fearless Fund to open its grant contest to Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and white women, but Fearless has decided to instead end it entirely, the statement said. All right, I'm going to stop it there. But again, twisting words. Please go back and watch my video on Edward Bloom. It's actually a video, not a live. But again, that conversation of twisting words. And this is why I say when we're not careful, especially as Black people, of the wording when it comes to enacting policy or different acts or different things we're behind, it's so easy for people to come and twist our words and weaponize them against us. So the very thing we were fighting against, discrimination, right? And with Fearless Fund, just for those who are new here, Fearless Fund, again, was a venture capitalist group that supported Black business owners, specifically Black women. And what this would do is they would give the $20,000 grants to, you know, Black business owners to help them with their business. Now, we know 20,000 isn't a lot of money, but it's still a start, right? And so one of the things that was taking place before Fearless Fund, let me get my, y'all know I got my numbers ready. Let me pull it back up. Let's see here. Where's my numbers? Okay, y'all messing me up. Where's my numbers? Y'all messing up my roll here. Hold on, we're gonna get this right because I don't like being wrong. Hell, maybe not. All right, anyway, long story short, in the venture capitalist world, Black businesses tend to be left out of the mix. And when it comes to Black businesses that are owned by Black women, at that point in time, before Fearless Fund jumped into the picture, Black women-owned businesses got 0.0006% of all venture capital funding. 0.0006%. Fearless Fund said, let's try to do the best we can to kind of get in there. And they're able to bring the number up to 0.35% or 0.035%. Please, somebody check my 0.35. I think I got a zero missing somewhere in there. But anyway, all that to say, and 0.35% of a percent is the issue, right? So even with the help that they had in that program, you know, it moved the needle a tiny bit. But Edward Bloom, this man who ran for office back in Houston way back in the 90s and lost, and because the district that didn't vote for him was majority Black, he's been after us ever since. He's also the reason why affirmative action has been gutted. He's the reason why there's a whole bunch of things that have screwed us over. He's the reason why the Voting Rights Act has been gutted, right? His name is tied to so much. Please go back and watch my Edward Bloom video. Edward Bloom, You Tried It. That's the title. But anyway, he said, oh no, you can't just have a scholarship for Black folks because that's reverse discrimination. That's discrimination against the Asian community and the white community and the Latino community. What about all of them? In reality, he didn't care about those communities. He just didn't want to see Black people doing anything for themselves. And that's the part that's very interesting. Folks will tell us to pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. And when we do, they cut the strap and then burn it, right? And then throw the shoe in the trash. And then tell you you're still doing something wrong. You're not working hard enough. And that's why I say the idea of like words being twisted, you have to be very careful. So going way back to the Minneapolis police, the idea of trying to say that the backlash that the police departments across this country got after the killing of George Floyd is the reason why you did not go after somebody with 3 warrants who ends up shooting somebody in the neck. And then when they shoot that person in the neck, because it was attempted murder, and this is all over the man cutting a tree. They were having some disputes about the yard. Like the two of them hadn't been getting along. White man kept bothering them. There had been different calls to the police about the white man doing all these different aggressive things to the Black family. And all of this had been documented and reported and nothing had ever been done, right? So we already know that there's tension boiling. Now this man, and this man was in his window upstairs and shot down and took, the video's out there, right? And y'all don't even arrest him and you want to claim that it's because there's just too much backlash and the police were afraid of what might happen. Nobody in the community was going to complain that you arrested somebody that shot somebody in the neck. Be for real. Just the stupidity of it all. Like, you know what? I forgot I had tea. This thing is cold now. That's all right. It's iced tea now. But man, freaking mess. All right, let me read some comments here. Somebody said, do I use a sponge curl brush? No, because my hair already curls on its own. If I start doing a sponge curl brush, it starts to actually lock. And I don't really want locks right now, at least. So yeah, I don't do the sponge curl brush. Plus my hair is a little too long for it. Like it's really long. So yeah. Somebody said, Calvin clearly lives in a very nice building. It's all right. I'm actually getting up out of here after February. We're about to make some life changes around here. I'm over this building. They get on my nerves in here so much. But yeah, actually, I think the building I lived in before is actually nicer, but I do like this apartment more than the last one. All right. Okay. Let me keep going. I got some more stuff to cover. Let's see. What else did I write down? Oh yeah. Okay. The Dwayne Wade statue. I was gonna go in here and fire the statue, but look, he approved it. If that's what he wants it to look like, good luck. You know, I feel like sometimes these statues don't be looking good. Like it made me think of the Usher Hard to Love album cover. If you remember how that one looked, where somebody had like the sculpture of his face, but it doesn't look like Usher at all. And I'll be honest, I didn't even like how the Martin Luther King memorial looks. Like he looked pissed off. It's like he's looking down like I done went and did all this and then died, and y'all still ain't got it right up in here. Like it doesn't really quite look like him to me. But I like the presentation of the space around it. But I feel like the face, I feel like they could have did it a little differently. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I saw the unveiling of the statue, and I was like, who is that? It don't even look like him at all to me. Like it looked like one of the characters off of I Am Legend when they were chasing Will Smith and the dog. Like, good luck. You know, he approved it, so that's what he wants. But man, okay, it's making me think of that Michael Jackson wax statue that's in the Jackson's torture video because Michael didn't show up to the video shoot, and that wax doll didn't look nothing like Michael. That's all I'm saying. What else? Somebody was asking. I didn't get a chance. I know they had the Whitney Houston screening for the South Africa concert last night. It was like a one night only thing, but I was on the plane, so I missed it. But I am watching the Luther doc on Wednesday, so I will have a review up for you guys with what I thought about the film, probably Thursday. Again, so the Luther doc is out in select theaters on Wednesday, the 30th. So if it's available, I suggest you check it out so I can have somebody else agree or disagree with me on my review. All right, Loomis and his national anthem. It's the national anthem this country deserves, right? I don't know if you saw this clip. Actually, I'll go ahead and play it. Let me see. Now, as a heads up, she does say like the F word in here, so be ready. I'll try to, maybe they'll bloop it out. Let's see. She was doing a little too much to begin with, but let's see. Where's it at? Y'all got it on here? All right. Give me some sound, baby. All right. Through the perilous fights for the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets red glare. I fucked it up. Can I go back, please? On the key. Okay, anyway, so honestly, before she got to the part where she started messing up, she wasn't doing that bad. I think sometimes people, they approach that song so aggressively and want to do so much. Sometimes it don't require all that, right? The only part that, to me, that makes it funny, she ended up cussing. She didn't realize it wasn't, or I don't know if she didn't get the memo, but it was live. She thought it was pre-taped. She could start over. That kind of sucks. But honestly, I feel bad. I've never heard of this person. I saw the clip and I thought this was somebody from like Zeus Network that was like doing something, but I have to look into her music. But to me, it kind of made me laugh. I was like, you stop mid song to say that you get effed up, and I'm like, oh, can I start over? They're like, no, it's live. It's like, shoot, okay. But no, I don't think that's one of the terrible ones. I just think she missed the note. You know, had an approach that didn't really quite work, and then what happens too sometimes, I think when people miss the note, then they try to make up for it later on and do the most later down the line, but it doesn't help. It makes it worse. Kind of like Carl Lewis, right? Remember when Carl Lewis started cracking? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna make up for it, and then he started getting worse. Like, listen, just do what you initially rehearsed at home and keep it going. But no, that clip was entertaining to me. But it's the national anthem that this country deserves at the moment. A lot of nonsense going on. What else? Like I said before, too, Pullovers I Can Hit You. You can watch it virtually. If you go to my community tab and look at the last announcement and click that link, you can watch it virtually through that link. I think it's $10 through the Michaud Film Festival, and it's streaming on Roku and Apple TV, so you can check that out. I got a chance to listen to the Tyler, the Creator album. He is one of my favorite rappers that's current. I actually really enjoyed this album. It's actually really, really nice. The thing that I like about Tyler, the Creator as an entertainer is, especially as a rapper, one of my critiques with a lot of rap music is this: I'm just bored with it. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Beats be sounding the same. They suck as live performers. There's just no motivation behind a lot of the music. So a lot of rappers I'm checked out from. But what I appreciate about Tyler's music is that there's musicality, right? There's melody. There's going to be some thought-provoking lyrics, some controversial. There's effort. You can tell that there's a theme and cohesion that is placed. And even with his live shows, you get a full experience. So check out that album if you get a chance. If you're into Tyler the Creator, I really enjoyed the album. Right now, my favorite song on the album, because I literally just listened to it today. I think it's called like "I Darling" or something like that. Let's see, it's "Darling I." That was the one I really enjoyed. Nice album. So shout out to him with that. I'm gonna pause and read some comments because I think that's all my major topics, other than the fact that them astronauts are still in space. The ones we talked about a few months ago. They ain't coming home till February, but good luck. All right, let us use the chat here. I think that's all my main topics, so we'll start winding down. Let's see. Somebody said, low key, I'll pay to see you square up with somebody, Calvin. I haven't been in a fight in so long. I'm not even a fighter anyway. Like, nobody ever would fight me because everything was always funny. Like, I always made people laugh, so nobody would ever, like, get that mad to where they want to square up. And then even if there was something going on, it always ended up being funny because I was that person that narrated the fight while I was fighting, if I was fighting, which was a rarity. So, like, me fighting is like watching Smokey from Friday get in a fight. I'm just, it's unserious. But, I stay ready, so don't try me. And I keep a hammer in my car door if anybody got road rage. All right, anyway. Don Smart said, I want to collaborate with Snoop Dogg, cooking together, called in the kitchen with Snoop. That would be cool. Snoop actually had a very dope rebrand for the second half of his career, right? You know, like some people don't have that smooth transition from being like rapper to something else. You know, you kind of just phase out and age out, but he's found a way to constantly stay relevant. It's pretty dope. Somebody said, remember Lil Durk's the same black man to sell himself to Morgan Wall, and he defended his racist behavior and money. See, I never followed Lil Durk, so I don't, other than that, whatever song I think I heard on the Mariah album, I don't really know his music. But see, stuff always comes back full circle. Do better, folks. Piscean Beauty said, I don't support the behavior, but sometimes we come from a certain place of privilege when we tell people to just do better. A lot of psychology behind how people act and how they do. And I 100% received that because I've always acknowledged that I feel like fortunately, I was blessed to not have to want for a lot. So I understand that there's going to sometimes be a disconnect with my experience versus somebody else's. So I totally received that comment. Let's see. The juices and berries. I love when somebody asks me that and I say juices and berries and they know what I'm talking about. I love us some black folks because Lord, the way when we can connect on certain things, that always cracks me up. So yeah, love that. Let's see. Somebody said, oh, resentencing for the what is that? Menendez brothers. I don't know what to think on that case at all. I watched the series on Netflix. I don't know. Somebody's blowing my phone up. I don't know what to think. Right? I don't know. It was always presented a certain way when I was coming up, and then understanding that Ryan Murphy, there's some things that he exaggerated in the editing and things that may not have necessarily happened, and so on and so forth. I honestly have no opinion on that. It was an interesting but very disturbing watch. But I do think it opens a conversation about sexual abuse. But yeah, let's see. Somebody said Dante Wright's mother wishes the cops would have been that lazy today. They pulled the son over, or Philando Castile. Yeah, that's my point. Like the idea of trying to say they can't go and get somebody who's already what the difference I see with all of this is the man already shot somebody on top of already having warrants, and y'all still playing like at first I thought what the story was is he had warrants, they didn't come after him, and then he shot somebody, and then they got him. Then what I found out He had warrants. They didn't come after him. He shot somebody. They still didn't come after him for a few days. What? And really, that only happened because the story hit the news and hit social media. Crazy. Crazy, crazy. I said, I love to see black people living good. Me too. You know what I always like seeing? Like, I was just at Howard Homecoming. Oh, shout out to, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. But I remember you from Tennessee State. But shout out to, I love seeing older black couples like that are like married 40, 50 years. There was this couple, they both met at Howard, and I don't know when they met, but I'm gonna just say they were definitely like in their 70s. And I just enjoyed walking behind them while I like we come off the subway or the metro and we're walking to the campus. So I was just kind of walking behind them. I was like, oh, that's so nice. So nice. They had like the his and her Howard gear on. I was like, oh, you love to see it. You just all get all tingly inside. Like you love to see it, right? Somebody said, first of all, who's Loomis? Let's find out because I don't know who she is. Let's see. Who is okay? Let's see. Loomis is. Wait, is it Loomis the Lust or is this a different artist? Okay, hold on. Loomis singer. I see an act called Loomis the Lust, but I don't think that's the same person. I don't know who this is. Maybe let me find her Instagram. Maybe, Instagram got everybody business on it. Okay, official Loomis. Okay, this is. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. 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 Well, I don't know who this is, but okay. All right. Let's read the rest of the comments here. Somebody said her breathing control was off. Did she even rehearse? I don't think she rehearsed, to be honest. I feel like, especially for like live events, you tend to like rehearse it a few ways where you go, unless you're like a Whitney Houston who just sang. Well, she still rehearses a lot actually when she was live. But like Whitney Houston never sing a song the same way. You could never sing along with her because like you'd be thinking you're about to do whatever, and here she comes with a whole new run or something that's not in the song that she brings. Like you could not sing along with her. You just had to shut up and listen. But yeah, folks tend to rehearse and kind of sing a song a certain way. They know what note they're going to attempt or not attempt, or what approach they're going to take, and maybe it varies or changes. Like I think of what's a good one? Like I always enjoyed it. The rehearsal was actually better than the performance. It's like Beyonce when she was doing 1+1 in the dressing room before American Idol. Like it's like that clip went viral. It was just her rehearsing in the mirror, and then when she did the actual performance, the performance was still good. The rehearsal to me was better. Yeah, folks tend to perform the way they rehearse. So I don't know what was happening there. Somebody said, have I listened to Doechie's album Alligator Bites That Never Heal? The Doechii project I have, let me look at what I bought. I have the All the Places You'll Go, but I think it's an EP. But that was from 2020. I haven't checked out the new project. Would I ever move away from DC? Yes. DC is home. I love DC, but I'm not against trying something else for a year or 2 or 3. Yeah. Somebody said, someone's asking about a DC meetup. I definitely had something planned. I just plans got a little shifted because I had to travel this past week, which I initially didn't plan to until the last minute. But no, I still would like to do something. I just don't know what to do and how to do it. We'll figure it out. But yes, I still want to do something. Plus, I'm not as skittish about meeting people anymore because at this point, every person I've met at this point, it's been a cordial experience. There might have been one person who was tripping a little bit, but it's all been good. Somebody said, is that your boo blowing you up? No, it's people still answering the question from the beginning of the live. People that are coming in later. I keep seeing like 70s, 60s, 80s. All right. If Kamala Harris wins, do you plan to attend the inauguration? Probably not. Like I don't want to. After I went to Obama's in 2012. I said I'll never go to another one of those things again. It's crowded. It's cold. It rained. Was it raining? I don't know. I just know I was freezing. Right. Trump's, it was raining, but I was at home. I wasn't going to that anyway. And at the time, I had a collapsed lung and pneumonia, so I certainly wasn't going. But yeah, I don't like large crowds anymore, especially for like big events. They just, after that baseball game I told you about, I'm skittish about crowds. Like even Howard Homecoming was, I went to like 1 or 2 events. I don't like being in large crowds. I'll go to a concert indoor after everybody's been through security, but like big events like inaugurations and stuff, I'm good on. But I'm sure the city will be very lively that day or that week. Somebody said, what do you think about all the Puerto Rican stars back in Kamala now? The thing that I would say to that is, I hope, remember that what we were saying earlier about the idea of not caring about something until it comes to your doorstep? That would be the one issue I kind of look at. Like, well, where were y'all at beforehand? And again, people can do whatever they want politically, but there's just certain things you kind of look at, right? It's kind of like people who maybe they marry somebody of another race, or like a white person that marries somebody black or anything like that, right? And then they have a biracial child, and then that's when they start caring about the issues with race, because now the children have to experience it. Like I get, like, yeah, we're happy that finally the eyes have been open and you're fighting for it. But damn, if you would have been there before, like that's how I look at it. But to each his own. Somebody said, I went to my first HBCU game 5 years ago and saw so many beautiful black elder couples with their matching gears of their alum. Yes, it's so beautiful to see. Honestly, and it's funny, I haven't been to a Howard football game since 2013, and I live down the street. I go to homecoming and go to the tailgate and, go to the off-campus unofficial events. But I haven't been to a Howard game in years. I don't even think the stadium looks the same anymore. But the games are fun. I love to hear the bands and see all the different dancing groups. Like the Howard has like the cheerleaders and then the ooh la la and then the Bisonettes. I love all that, but I just haven't gone. The game is really hard to get into if you're already like not a student. You got to like be on top of things. And since I live here, I'm usually out of the loop with homecoming until the week of. And for like a Howard homecoming, you got to be in the know like early, like right as everything is announced. Otherwise, you miss out on a lot of stuff, right? Somebody says Trump is winning every battleground state according to the polls, so don't get your hopes up for Harris inauguration. I already said the polls are kind of iffy because remember in 2016, everybody thought Hillary had a 98% chance of winning, and then Ohio went red and folks started shaking, right? I don't think it's a close election at all. Well, but that's just me. I could be 100% wrong, but we'll see next week. My real concern is when the election is called, how people are going to start acting. That is like, okay. But yeah. I will check out the Dochi project. Calvin, be sure to submit your film for ABFF. Yeah, I think the deadline is February. It's usually like February 1st, so we probably will. All right, so we're going to start winding down. Way off topic. I believe it's time for TLC to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let's see. You just need to be active for 25 years. They came out like 91, 92. Yeah, they're eligible. Yeah, I would support it. They y'all know that's one of my favorite groups. I was just playing Depend on Myself on the way home today off the first album. Always like the production on that song. It's always a fun one. Let's see. Yeah, somebody said already playing with the votes and setting the mailboxes on fire. That and this politics is so tribal. How like Deborah Cox, how did we get here? Now y'all burn it. You burning the boxes, and it's also targeted because it's in the areas where people think that the majority of the votes are going to go one way, so they go and burn those boxes. Wow, to me, I'm like, where the police at? This is when y'all want to over police everything else. This in the same way y'all like to sit in certain neighborhoods and stare at people. Go sit by some of them boxes, sit by the mailboxes and the polling stations until the election is over, right? Man. Angel, shout out to Angel Heaven, because please go to their YouTube channel. They got all the good stuff on there, right? Everybody has been discovering all of these like vintage R&B performances and stuff. Shout out to you, all right? Plus, they've been on this channel since forever, since I was at the apartment with the posters on the wall. So shout out to them. But yeah, TLC, yeah, they should definitely get a Video Vanguard Award. But I feel like MTV's kind of been dropping the ball with that lately. And I feel like there's going to be a caliber of artists that get left out because MTV's just, it's a weird channel now, right? Music is already like a second tier. It's not even a thing with the channel. But I just feel like all the people who are studied within music or well studied are not in the room when they put these award shows and stuff together. So yeah. Oh, I didn't know Angel Haven was on Cyber TLC. That's okay. So then we know each other from before the internet because that's how I used to post on the forum. Okay. See how everybody on the internet be connected for years and years? We'd love to see it. All right, let me just make sure I got all my topics and then we can kind of call it a night. I have a bunch of promo stuff coming. Oh, somebody said, did you talk about the question about the spiritual hatred yet? Oh, the part that I was saying was I was talking about how whiteness is so strong in the U.S. that it overpowers spirituality. That's what I was going to, but you can tie that right into spiritual hatred as well. Like it's almost like embedded where people are emotional about it, right? Where they're willing to commit violence and crime all in the name of how they feel on the inside. I'm like, how do you get to that space in life where that's how you move? And the hatred that you have for other groups of people is that intense to the point where you're willing to go and commit crime and violence. Wild to me. Wild to me. Oh, apparently there's a Jerry Springer documentary coming out as well. I think I watched that too. I never really actually I watched it, but I wasn't watching it like that. But I do remember some episodes. I always thought the whole show was fake. One of my oh no, they went on the Mari show, never mind. In the audience. Yeah. Dang. Oh, and then I'm still keeping up with Love is Blind, y'all. It's my guilty pleasure. But yeah, wild show as well. Anyway, let's see. Okay, I remember Angel. Yeah, I know that person. Yeah, I wonder what happened to her. Sorry for those who are out of the loop here. We're talking music forums now. What was your username? Or was it the same thing? I don't even remember what my username was on that forum. I know my username in the later years was like CQ for everything. But I don't remember my usernames. Dang. This is really like 20 years ago. Like, I think when I was posting on the music forums as like a teenager, this is like 2000, 2001. I was like 6th and 7th grade. But yeah, I used to be on all the music forums, but I was kind of like a quiet person. Nobody really knew who I was like that. But yeah, what a time. What a time. All right. So yeah, we're definitely gonna do the Luther Vandross doc Wednesday. I'm not gonna do a live about it. I'll just make a pre-recorded video, and then I think that's. Oh, and then like I said, I got to get this podcast out. I'm sorry, y'all. It's supposed to be coming, and then there's some other stuff down the pipeline. And then yeah, somebody said I'm planning to go. I mean, inauguration is still a great time for people who come. It's a great time. It's like lots of people come to the city. You know, the restaurants give really cool discounts. You meet a lot of people who, you know, are excited about whatever candidate. It's a cool time. It's just cold, man. And 2008 was even worse. I didn't even go. Fortunately, well, not fortunately, but this is when I was still at Howard and I had to work the desk because I was an RA. So I couldn't go to that inauguration because I had front desk duty. Now the other RAs were like, F that, just come on. But I was scary. So I did my job. But 08 was, or actually it was 09, January, even colder than 2012. It was ridiculous. Like people were passing out and getting hypothermia. And even with me working in the lobby, every time somebody opened the front door, you just felt the cold. I was like, I'm glad I ain't out there. Right. But I went to all the like inauguration events before and afterwards. So that was cool. Actually, that was a time. That was my junior year of college. Really interesting time. I was in this little relationship at the time too. So I remember like the inauguration was like this magical night. Like what a time, what a time. But inauguration, it's cold outside. I can't do it no more. I ain't trying to be out there freezing. Like, no. Let's see. Marlon, I hate what they've done with that. Can you talk about licensing when it comes to music? I'm sorry. Can you talk about music licensing when it comes to the streaming services like Netflix, BT Plus, and Hulu? A lot of people were upset when Netflix edited out all that performances, which is so stupid because the main highlight of all that was the performances. The skits were funny, but when I was a kid, you broke your. Sorry, I keep sliding in the seat. Everybody and their mom broke their neck to watch the performances, especially when all that first came out. I will never forget being so mad at my mom because TLC was like on the first 2 episodes of all that. Like the first episode they performed What About Your Friends, and the next one they did Creep. And I remember we had to go to Bible study, and I was gonna miss it. And this is before DVR, and you could just record the shows and add them to. No, if you missed it, you missed it. You better record it and get a double take. And my mom was like, "No, you're not recording that." And I don't think I saw that performance until YouTube came out. I was hot with her. But yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I think sucks with the licensing and with streaming is like a lot of the shows, because I saw that with the Parkers and stuff too, with like Moesha, that episode where it's Kim singing the How Do I Live? Something, but they took it out the episode. The labels and the Hollywood and labels need to get it together, because streaming right now, there's a lot of like movies and TV shows where you're not getting the full product because they've had to yank things out because of licensing issues. And that really stems from the fact that the music industry ain't got no money. Because again, once we brought in streaming, the revenue's different. Revenue's not the same. So everybody's trying to cut corners. And then with film and TV, streaming is great technically, but the problem is they're also not bringing in money, because the challenge is, like, the goal with streaming services is to bring in new subscribers every time you have a new show. But what eventually happens is you have to keep creating new shows to keep the subscribers subscribed or to keep them coming, and the budgets get bigger and bigger and bigger, but you're still feeding that same pool of subscribers, so the money's not coming in as fast, right? So that's why, like, when Disney Plus first came out, it was massive, and then give it a few months, the momentum has died down, and they're not able to pull in new subscribers. The same thing with all of them, and now you're seeing all of the streaming services start merging together, right? But yeah, there's a lot going on. Even with like Universal pulling out of like TikTok, there's all these different things that happen. I think personally, I don't see it happening, but I think entertainment has to go back to the idea of ownership, where people could own what they consume, where you can purchase. I mean, you can still purchase music on iTunes and stuff, but like my beef with streaming, again, something happens with the label, they pull the song and you can't get it. Like somebody who's saying earlier, like even with my Before Tomorrow album is temporarily not streaming. It should come back up tomorrow or sometime during this week. But like simple, like if you're somebody who was streaming the projects, now there's one that you can't listen to until it comes back up, right? Unless you purchased it on iTunes or Amazon or something like that. So I think that aspect kind of sucks with a lot of things. And even with movies, what the streaming sites tend to do is when they cancel a show or yank a movie, like a canceled show on Netflix, they cancel it and then they pull it off the site, so the people don't even get the royalties and everything like that, because they don't want to pay the royalties out. So there's like certain shows that have come on HBO Max or Paramount Plus that have been canceled that we will never see again unless there's some kind of deal later down the line. I think that sucks, right? So I like the idea of ownership again, but I don't think we'll go back to that. I don't see us going back to a society of going to the store and buying DVDs and buying CDs. It's ideal for millennials and Gen Xers because that's what we grew up on. But in the world of Gen Alpha and Gen Z, that's not their experience. If they've been getting music for free all these years, they're not about to start paying $13 for an album. Like, it's just different day and time. But people will support vintage ideas. So yeah, people will buy vinyls and stuff, but who knows? We'll see. Somebody said I used to be deep in the daytime talk shows in the 90s and early 2000s. Yeah, I just didn't care for Jerry Springer. Like my shows, like I told y'all, Phil Donahue was my favorite as I got older. But as a kid, Sally Jesse Raphael and like Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake and Forgive or Forget, sometimes Montel, sometimes. Those are my shows. And my grandma watched all the court shows, so I've always liked watching those. She used to watch Judge Mills Lane, Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, the People's Court. Like, she used to watch all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of rubbed off on me as well. Will I go to Trump's tonight? I will not even be outside. I will be in the house with the blinds down. That blinds down. I ain't gonna be there for that. No. Calvin, did you decide to buy moving to a house in February? No, it's too expensive. But I'm considering like some additional options. So yeah, either way, I will not be in here after February. Yeah. Why don't I think the race will be close? Because a lot of the polls that have come out are through third-party companies that tend to skew one direction and tend to be in the favor of Republicans to begin with. That's one of them. But then also the polls have been wrong for like the last few election cycles. They were wrong in 2020. They were wrong in 2016. They were wrong in 2022 midterms. They just haven't been getting it right. And I think it's because the people that they tend to poll, or the sample size, is not representative enough of the United States. The people who tend to participate in the polling tend to be older Americans that are from a different generation. A lot of times Gen Z and younger millennials are not a part of that conversation because one, we're not answering a phone number we don't recognize, right? So the polling is never really quite accurate. I think it's kind of relative, but I think the polls are off. This is just how I see it. But who knows? We're gonna see next week either way, right? YouTube blocked a lot of CSAC content last month until they resolved their issues. Yeah, it's a mess. Somebody said streaming is like cable at this point. They cut half the entire episodes, and I just, yeah, I'm not enjoying it. We might as well just bring cable back. But the problem with cable is it's so expensive. And you know what's crazy? The cable companies are still expensive. Everybody has pulled out of cable, and everybody's on streaming on YouTube TV. And Xfinity and them is still charging people $200 and $300 for cable. Like, y'all not okay. Make it make sense. Somebody said, who knew Judge Joe Brown was so vile? LOL, what's wrong with him? Oh my God, Joe is he is just got senile. When what did he say? You know, I'm not even gonna put that out there because I'm not gonna bring that energy back to this channel, but a mess. Do I think they will stage another coup if Kamala wins? Oh, it's about to go down outside, and I'm gonna be right here to watch. But I don't think it will be successful. If the United States has any common sense, they would have already put procedures in place to be prepared for something like this to go down. But we'll see. But then again, I don't know. But I think you're going to see the worst in people either way. But I think, yeah. I hate politics so much. I hate that we got to do this every year. And then every 2 years and every 4 years, I'm drained from it. I wish I could be a person who just doesn't care and just lives life and is blindly, just blissfully happy. I wish, but I'm too locked in, right? Plus, I wouldn't want to be a walking fool, but a mess. Somebody said, I missed the hair plug, but you look good in locks, Calvin. I would get them, but see, here's my fear. You got to always kind of retwist and retwist and retwist. And I'm at that age where this is when the hairline starts sliding back. So I don't want to do nothing to trigger this hairline to slide back because I already got some forehead here. Like I already got forehead. So this has to stay where it's at. Moving back just any bit will start having me looking like Maurice from Earth, Wind and Fire. God rest his soul. And I refuse. So, yeah. But if I was going to get them, I would have got them when I was younger. But I always used to get like the twist that kind of looked like them anyway. You just tie them back. But yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll get them, but I don't like a lot of pulling and tugging in the front. Like, no, this needs to be exactly as is, right? So yeah. And then when they get and they look really nice on people. I don't know. I think I look okay on this. See, I kind of like having this kind of like bigger hair because I like okay, don't judge, but I like the correlation of the hair with the goatee. I've kind of cut this down a little bit, but I always like this combination here. I think with locks, if they're like tied back and hanging down, it don't do the same thing. But anyway. All right. Somebody said, I think the problem is Trump outperforms the polls on election day. The polls had Biden beating Trump by a wider margin in 2020. A close race is a bad sign for Kamala. Hope she wins, though. I mean, I think either way, the results will show kind of where America is at or what America wants. And I think lessons will be learned with what the next approach is for 2026, which is crazy. It's like as soon as you breathe out of 2024, you got to think about the midterms, right? But I personally, this is just me, I just think people are tired and people just want a sense of normalcy. And I think that's what's going to drive the election. That's just me. I think people are kind of tired of just everything being so extreme and the us versus them and the this and the that. And you go on social media and there's a post about somebody who saved a puppy's life. And as soon as you look at the bottom, the first comment is, you know, stupid Joe Biden, something. It's like, what does it have to do with anything, right? Like it just, I need people to go outside after this election. To like go outside and play with frisbees and go to work and take a culinary class. I need people to find their peace again, because how do you live your life so locked into politics where you spend all day worried about who you got beef with? That's crazy to me. Like I can't do it at all. Like I have no problem doing the research and being informed, but this is not my blood at all. Like this is not what I'm rooted in, right? I just tend to understand it. Okay, anyway, guys, I want to go to sleep. I gotta go to work tomorrow, and I got some stuff I need to film tomorrow for work. So yeah, this has been dope. Like I said, I know one album is temporarily on pause, but the other one is still there. After Yesterday is a wonderful album. I love it, love it, love it. Yeah, we're looking at doing some things. I'm trying to figure out what my next video will be for, as far as like the music, like as far as the next music video. This is for the people who actually like my music. I know all y'all don't be rocking my stuff. It's okay. But yeah, we haven't picked the next single yet. But the idea, since I dropped 2 albums, the idea is to at least make sure both albums have a single that's released. Right now, only one has a single, which is I Want from Before Tomorrow. So I haven't released an official single from After Yesterday, but we're leaning towards the song One Question, even though I'm really thinking about the song Fantasy or Love and Sometimes. So, and maybe even Desire. So there's so many choices. I love both projects though. So we'll see. Anyway, guys, this has been dope. Pressing, exactly. Democrat run cities while puppies are getting saved. Like, just crazy, silly comments. All right. Anyway, guys, I'm out. Please stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And yeah, I'll see you guys with the Luther Vandross review when I come back from the movies on Wednesday. But you might not hear from me till Thursday. All right, folks. Good night.